Over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
Affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
A very good morning to you. It's just gone 6 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 8th of May, and you are tuned into Breakfast with Isabel Webster and Ben Leo.
Very good morning to you too. Here's what's leading the news this morning. Amid a rise in young people being bullied online, Ofcom is set to get tough, introducing new age restrictions to use social media.
Prince Harry's back in the UK to celebrate 10 years of his Invictus Games charity today, but why has he been snubbed by the King?
And the UK warns Israel over the risk of war crimes in Rafah, as UNICEF says 600,000 children face catastrophe in the region.
Plus chaos at our airports as a nationwide e-gate glitch left tens of thousands stranded in terminals. We want to hear from you this morning. If you were affected, let us know. Get in touch, gbnews.com/yoursay.
And as more details of the Ministry of Defence hack are revealed, should we be getting tougher on China?
And in the sport this morning, Borussia Dortmund beat Paris Saint-Germain again to reach the Champions League final, where they'll play either Bayern Munich or Real Madrid, who are currently at 2-2, and they play tonight. Nottingham Forest have lost their appeal against their points deduction. And finally, Erik ten Hag. Is he a dead man walking?
Good morning. Another day of sunny and bright weather for many of us, but will that sunshine last until tomorrow? You can find out all the details with me a little later on.
A very good morning to our top story today. The regulator Ofcom has unveiled new age restrictions for online social media use in a bid to keep children safer online.
Yes, so social media firms will be required to introduce robust checks, including the use of photo ID, such as passports, to identify children using their sites and applications.
And it comes today as internet safety charity Internet Matters has revealed 1 in 7 teens have experienced online nude sharing abuse.
Political editor for HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield, joins us now. Good morning, Kevin. Thanks for joining us. So, children, I mean, I've always argued that it should be adults who shouldn't be using social media, let alone kids. And actually, quite shocking statistics from Ofcom claim that more than half of 7 to 12-year-olds have used applications such as TikTok or Instagram using fake dates of birth. So this will be stopped under this new online safety bill.
Well, certainly, hopefully, it will be stopped. Certainly, that's the ambition. I think it's very important that we do protect children as much as possible online. I know personally, I've got a couple of kids, and they are fascinated by social media and online, and you have to work very hard actually to protect them. So, any help I think that parents can get from the tech companies themselves would be much appreciated. But yeah, I can absolutely understand why Ofcom have taken this action. We've seen some tragic incidents, obviously, of young people who have been using social media who have tragically lost their lives. So yeah, it's clear there's a real political momentum behind this as well. People want to see action taken, and they want to see the tech giant take this very seriously indeed.
Yes, but is this going to work? And I suppose the question is, they're requiring kids to now provide ID from the age of 13 in order to use social media. There's always been this concern that they'll be able to get hold of fake ID, there'll be workarounds the system. And also, if they are, able to prove that the tech companies haven't fulfilled their part of the bargain, how much gravitas, how much power does Ofcom really have? I mean, they're talking about 10% of global profits for these organisations, but is that really going to happen? Little lowly Ofcom versus TikTok in China?
Well, absolutely. Meta as well, hugely powerful corporations who obviously have their own bottom line that they want to protect as much as possible. So yeah, we have to hope, obviously, that Ofcom have the powers to back this up. The thing as well is, kids are very inventive when it comes to trying to work their way around rules, when it comes to ID. So you really have to hope that these measures are robust enough to ensure that children can, as I say, work around the rules as they are put in place. But obviously, parents have a responsibility as well to try and make sure that their kids are not seeing stuff online that they shouldn't be. But it's a constant battle, and obviously the hope is that these measures that Ofcom are bringing will finally tilt the balance in favour of parents and child safety.
Yeah, Kevin, one of the main aspects of the new bill is the ability for children not to be added to groups without their consent, for example, on WhatsApp or on Snapchat, because there has been concern in recent times where kids are unwittingly added to groups of 100, 200, maybe even more people, and viewing unwittingly, pornography, racist content. That surely is something that parents would support.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, the technology is moving at such a fast pace constantly. They're trying to keep ahead of it as a parent is virtually possible. So you need to try and lean on these tech companies to try and make sure that they are putting measures in place themselves to ensure that children aren't seeing inappropriate content. As I say, this is a huge political issue now. Parents are demanding action, and it's up to politicians and the regulator to come up with measures which will keep our children safe.
OK, Kevin Schofield, thanks very much indeed for filling us in on that story. If you're affected by this, let us know. We're both parents, aren't we, Ben?
Do you let your kids on the app?
They certainly don't have social media yet. They're only 8 and 6.5, but it's something that I really, really care about, whether or not that they're going to have their own smartphones. I've actually sort of doing my own little low-level campaign amongst my own friends and parents to try and change the law so that kids can't get their hands on smartphones until they're 16 to prevent any of this. You know, I think this is one step in the right direction, but I think we've got a long way to go still.
Mine definitely don't. But my only concern is, if you hold them back too much technologically, are they going to be left behind with their peers?
Well, that's why I think it needs to be a uniform thing. I think there's too much pressure on the parents to kind of, you know, bay to the crowd. I think if all parents were in the same position, all schools supported it, I think it could be a really positive thing, not least because of all the evidence that we're seeing about their brains just are not mentally capable of dealing and processing with a lot of the content that you were just describing. Certainly, you know, pre-puberty or under 16.
And I'll say again, I mentioned it just there, I don't think the vast majority of adults should be looking at content.
I agree.
They call it doom scrolling, when you're just aimlessly and inanely flicking through Instagram, seeing all this content which is, you know, arguably turning your brain to mush. So what do you do?
Yes, well, then it's funny because I then sort of flip the argument and say, look, I can see the positives to Instagram and social media because I think of all the life hacks that I've picked up through doing it. I mean, I'm personally completely obsessed by interiors. I get so much inspiration from all the interior content that I follow on there. So there are positives to it. It doesn't necessarily have to rot your brain as long as you have a bit of self-control, but I think for kids who can't regulate themselves...
It's the algorithm.
They need help. It's
Sort out the algorithm.
Right, has the King sorted out the algorithm? He is denying access for his son, Prince Harry, who's in the UK. He said he will not meet up whilst he's here to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Invictus Games.
Yes, Harry landed in London yesterday ahead of an event marking 10 years since the Invictus Games launched. However, a spokesperson for the Duke of Sussex told GB News it's unfortunately not possible due to His Majesty's full programme, adding that the Prince is, quote, understanding of his father's commitments and hopes to see him soon.
Well, let's speak to Showbiz and Royal reporter Kinsey Schofield. Good morning to you, Kinsey. I mean, whatever way you cut this is a snub from his father. I mean, surely, especially given that he's had health concerns recently, no matter how busy your diary is, nobody doubts that it's busy, you find time to see your son when he lives on the other side of the world, surely.
I mean, I do think, especially for the American market, that Prince Harry is courting so aggressively that this plays very well into his victimhood narrative. Daddy didn't love me. I'm only the spare. I wasn't hugged as a child. He didn't take me on bike rides. I mean, that falls right in this category. But the fact that it's Prince Harry's team that's telling us this, you know, the palace refusing to comment, and the fact that Prince Harry's willing to overshare to the extent of saying, I'm not seeing my dad, and here's why it's his fault, I think gives us some insight as to why the king isn't pursuing a meeting with his son. Obviously, nothing is sacred. They can't trust him. The last time Prince Harry jumped on a plane and went over to visit with his father, you know, I turned on Good Morning America a few days later, and Prince Harry was discussing that meeting on an international, you know, morning show. So perhaps they are trying to be protective of their space right now. The crown, you know, the crown is in crisis if you consider their health issues, and maybe the king is just looking for some peace.
Yeah, I guess, Kinsey, throwing your family under the bus in the manner that he did has consequences. Who'd have thought? But what about the Princess of Wales, Catherine? She's, of course, recovering battling cancer still, and is recovering as we speak. He's not even going to visit her, is he? Prince William is away, of course, but they were so close at one point, and it just seems rather sad that he can't find even a couple of minutes to meet with her.
Well, I feel kind of, you know, in their defense, I wonder if both the King and the Princess of Wales are being instructed by their doctors to be wary of socializing with somebody who's just been on a plane with how many people we don't know. Prince Harry's meeting with a lot of people over the next 3 days for the Invictus Games. And the Princess of Wales, we do know, is going through preventative chemotherapy for cancer. That will weaken your immune system. That's why we're not seeing her very often. So it could be as simple as just trying to protect her body and her strength right now.
Come on, Kinsey. He was on a private jet, you know it. Anyway, as Ben was alluding to, we're hearing these reports. I think Tatler have been claiming that Prince William, away for a night, he's off to Nans Ledan. This is the site for his first homelessness project that he's setting up down in Cornwall. Lots of commentators saying, is this a sign, perhaps, that the Princess of Wales is on the mend? Now, we obviously aren't in the business of speculating about her health, but I suppose all of us, you included, big fans of the Princess of Wales and hopeful that this could mean something positive.
Yeah, I really felt a little relief when I saw him joking about Jack Whitehall and throwing it back to Jack Whitehall, always saying that Kate was the one that got away. I mean, the fact that he was willing to make light of that situation, to me, gave me a little bit of hope. But I agree. I think that it is a good sign that the Princess of Wales is hopefully on the mend. And it's unfortunate, but I think Ben hit the nail on the head. Actions have consequences and words have consequences. And the royal family has had an especially hard 2024, and I think they're trying to protect their peace.
So, Kinsey, Prince Harry is, of course, doing his Invictus gig at St Paul's. That finishes at about 6 p.m, I think. The King, meanwhile, is engaged in a garden party at Buckingham Palace. That finishes slightly earlier at 4. They're definitely not meeting, as we understand this morning. Does this signal the end of any future relationship? Because from the outside, you would have thought if there's one occasion that you could have some sort of unification, it's the fact that Harry's in the city that his father lived, and, of course, he's battling cancer. If they can't do it under these circumstances, when will they ever?
I mean, and just imagine, there's literally a chance that their paths could cross in a car. I mean, isn't that crazy to think about? No, I see what you're saying. I don't think that this is, I don't want to say this, there will never be a reconciliation here. I think that this just isn't the right time. Patience is a virtue, and this just isn't the right time. But I will say both sides were telling me that there was going to be a meeting. So did something happen over the last few days? Was there an argument about Camilla being in the room? What could have taken place that sent this south? Because we were all being told to expect a meeting between Harry and his father.
Definitely raises more questions than it answers. Kinsey Schofield, as always, lovely to see you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not sure if someone had called my wife a wicked stepmother, I'd be keen on meeting them either. Who knows?
Well, families, it's easy to lose them. You don't get to choose them. I think it's always sad when there's, bad beef between father and son. Fingers crossed there can be some sort of reunion in the future, but not in the Leo household.
No, not yet. Anyway, I was saying to you earlier how so we're having a discussion off air about my kids and Isabel's kids, and how I'm fearful for when they grow up and they won't want to hang out with me anymore.
I said they still will. Don't worry.
And I would just dread to think that we ever have an argument where I don't speak to my son. I couldn't imagine it. So I feel sad for the King and for Harry and for all of them. It's horrible.
Right, let's turn to other matters now. The time's 6:13. Here are the other stories making the headlines today. And the Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, has warned that the UK is at risk of committing war crimes in Rafah if they continue their latest offensive without a credible plan to protect civilians. It comes as the United States also urges Israel to accept a ceasefire deal with Hamas. The global charity UNICEF has warned that the ground incursion into Rafah will pose a catastrophic risk to the 600,000 children currently taking shelter in that part of Gaza.
And to Worcester, where a woman has admitted to being part of a global monkey torture network. Holly Legresley posted more than 130 videos and 20 photos of the animals being tortured to online chat groups. The 37-year-old pleaded guilty to separate charges of publishing obscene articles and intentionally encouraging animal cruelty. She was charged, along with another woman, after an investigation into animal torture overseas.
And a nationwide issue with Border Force e-gates has caused significant disruption at airports overnight. Heathrow, Gatwick and Manchester were all affected by the outage as tens of thousands of people were left stranded in terminals. A spokesperson for the Home Office has revealed that the network issue occurred just before 8 o'clock last night. The e-gates came back online at midnight. There's no indication that it was as a result of a cyber attack, although we do want to hear from you if you were caught up in that. Now, the Defence Secretary has told MPs that the government cannot rule out state involvement in a hack at the Ministry of Defence, but refused to confirm reports that China was behind it.
Beijing has strongly denied reports it's behind the hack, saying the accusations are, quote, completely fabricated. Security specialist Will Geddes joins us now. Will, good morning to you.
Hi.
First of all, why, maybe I'm being too simplistic in this could possibly be some 20-year-old kid in Russia or, you know, Eastern Europe with a bit of sophistication behind him. Why is it necessarily a state actor? Can you explain for those who
OK, so we have to look at the landscape at the moment, the landscape of cybersecurity and particularly the risks from nation-states overseas that could be deemed as hostile. And we look at signatures of behaviour and we look at signatures of attack. Where are they attacking? What are the intentions? What are the motivations? And what could be the dividends or the returns on those investments of efforts? Now, it could very well be a 20-year-old who's in his mum's basement who's doing it, but he could have very well been instructed by a state actor to do it on their behalf, and that's not uncommon. It's a part of their plausible deniability process to say, we as a state haven't officially done it, we haven't done it out of an official agency, it's been done through a proxy, and this has nothing to do with us. So, you know, again, we've seen this with Russia, we've seen this with China, we've seen it in Ukraine, we've seen it all over the world, where they will use separate entities to carry out these attacks. But we look at the targeting and we look at what they've targeted, and I'm having my own question marks about the border force system.
So am I, actually, funnily enough.
I think everybody is, Isabel. So I think we have to consider at the moment that unless we're told otherwise, and it's confirmed otherwise, we are susceptible to a series of multi-platform attacks.
It seems to be the sort of, I guess, the modus operandi of the government at the moment, that wherever China is involved, there is a huge time lag before we're actually told. I don't know why, but it could well be that it's 2 years down the line before we're actually told exactly who was behind this. But in the meantime, all of us are wondering, is this a serious threat to national security? And are we being robust, as the Prime Minister claims, enough in dealing with this?
Well, I don't think we are being robust. I think there are a lot of people working behind the scenes very, very hard to keep us robust. But I think in terms of some of the political rhetoric coming out at the moment, I think you're absolutely right. The general public are not stupid, and they're not going to be duped by sort of very woolly information. Certainly, this information not coming out till sometime later, there are some question marks about that. There's the Information Commissioner Officer, which are responsible, obviously, for managing and setting legislation for the control and protection of data, particularly where it has members of the general public. So we can raise some question marks over the late release of information and whether it should have been reported, which is an obligation by an organisation if they do have a breach. But, yeah, there are lots and lots of interesting things going on right now. And in terms of the resilience, we heard about Grant Shapps' 8-point plan. It's pretty straightforward. You do a penetration test. This is done all the time in the private sector. You test by black, grey or white hackers, and those are the different types, the black being the complete anonymous hacker who knows nothing about the network, grey being partially aware of how the network is set up, and white is obviously the insider threat. You then test it, you see where the weaknesses are, you remediate those, you test it again. It's not difficult, and it's about resilience. That's the key thing. If the system does get attacked, what kind of measures have you got in place for early warning? And how can you relay the system into a secure environment so that you can continue supply? We look at the airports, that raises questions about what kind of resilience did we have in place for a £372 million paid for by taxpayers system.
Yeah, no, it is really alarming, and you can go down a sort of rabbit hole of worry when you start thinking. I mean, we're talking to the government later about uranium enrichment plant that's being developed in the UK for the first time for decades.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a first for that particular programme. And then you think, well, if there's cybersecurity question marks and we're doing uranium enrichment, where does the security step in? And, you know, are we safe? So there are, I think, serious questions about, you know, national security.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions to be raised about potentially elements in the private sector, and there are some very, very good technical and cyber-capable entities out there that can come in and cross-check. They can audit and test. And I think one of the biggest problems is it's a closed market. It's a little bit, I don't want to draw it in, but it's almost like the vaccine market. And that's going to open up a whole can of worms. But there has to be some cross-checking by third parties who have no vested interest other than to come in and test it.
But, Will, can I sorry to interject. How on earth are we expected to protect our interests when, for example, a job posting for the Treasury yesterday, recruiting the head of cyber security, was offering 57k a year? Might sound like a fairly decent wage for a lot of people, of course it is, but for that particular role, head of cyber security at the Treasury, not even 60k a year. You're not going to attract the best talent.
You're not. And you're going to get, hopefully, if they're lucky, someone very young, very early on in their career who's exceptionally talented. So you're whittling it down to a very, very, very small number of candidates. A Chief Information Security Officer in most companies will be earning at least £250,000 a year. So 5 times what they're offering. So we have to look at commensurate salaries and remuneration for the capability and the skills that are necessary.
Yeah, OK. Will Geddes, thank you. Are you bidding for that job, Wayne?
No, it's a bit below my pay grade.
Not for 50k.
Quite right. All right, well, thank you very much indeed. See you again soon. Now, as many of you will know, we have been nominated for a Trick Award and we're very delighted about it. It's in the Best News Programme category, but we really do need some help.
Yes, all you have to do is head to poll-trick.org.uk. All the details are also shown on gbnews.com, so please vote now to make it count. Which categories are we up for? You and Eamonn?
Eamonn's up for Best Presenter, as is Nigel Farage, and Camilla Tominey is also up for Best Interview for Interview with Alistair Stewart, and then obviously there's the Breakfast Programme nominated for Best News Programme. So it's a fair chunk of nominations, and we're really thrilled, and obviously we won a couple last year, and the year before. I think Eamonn won Best Presenter the year before that, so... You know, fingers crossed we'll get some more success this year, and all of that depends on you guys at home. So thank you for those who do take the time to vote. We really do appreciate it.
And, you know, it will definitely ruffle the feathers of all the right people as well. So make sure you get onto those websites and please, please vote. Let's get your weather update with Annie.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. It should be a dry day for most of us. There's a bit of a cloudier start across the east coast. That's because some clouds pulled in overnight. That should slowly start to burn back throughout this morning and into the afternoon. There could also be some cloudier skies across western coasts into this afternoon, but I think many inland areas will see some long-lived sunshine. It will feel quite warm in the sunshine. However, notice across northwestern areas of Scotland, we're starting to see some rain approach through this afternoon. That'll mainly be restricted to the Western Isles, perhaps parts of the Highlands, and it will feel a little bit cooler here with a bit of a breeze, but in the sunshine, highs of 21 degrees are expected this afternoon, so a similar feel to yesterday. Through this evening, that rain will continue to persist across the far northwest, turning heavy at times, but it will remain restricted to the north of Scotland. Elsewhere, it should stay dry overnight, but again, we could see some mist and fog starting to develop. Some drizzly rain is also possible over parts of the Pennines and southern Scotland. Should be another fairly mild night, despite any clearer skies. So a bright start for many areas of the UK on Thursday, perhaps some mist and fog that will be fairly quick to clear, and it's going to be another dry, bright and sunny day on Thursday. However, across the far northwest of Scotland, still skies will remain cloudier. Rain should start to ease, though, as you head towards the afternoon, with some brightness developing here as well. But in the sunshine, highs of 22 or 23 degrees, so rather warm with high UV levels.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I was just saying to Ben, it was surprisingly foggy or misty, whatever you want to call it, the technical term, on the way in this morning, having had a beautiful sunset last night. I was really quite surprised.
I think it's meant to be a nice week, though, until Sunday.
Until Sunday.
I've looked at the weather and it's meant to be maybe 20 degrees, perhaps.
I think I saw 2024.
Really?
Yeah.
Which, after 6, 7, 8 months of grey skies and rain, hallelujah.
Yeah, I'm wearing my yellow dress in tribute to the sun. But anyway, as we've been discussing, summer is just around the corner and we want to make it sizzle for you with an incredible £20,000 in cash up for grabs in the latest Great British Giveaway.
Yep, it's our biggest cash prize to date and it could be yours. Here's how you could be a winner.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox and I won the Great British Giveaway. I'd say why not? What is it? The price of a text and £2 to enter. And if I can win it, anybody can win it. And they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Very good. Best of luck to you. Still to come, we'll have the latest on the Donald Trump trial. Stormy Daniels, of course, paid him a, quote, hush money figure. I think it was...
Well, he paid her.
He paid her, sorry, yeah. A bit early, isn't it?
It's all right, it's a bit early. But I tell you what, it was juicy in court yesterday. Lots of detail, almost too much detail. The judge had to keep saying, we don't need to know all of that. Yeah. We won't necessarily go into all of that, but we will pick out the best bits after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on. Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's Tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So a judge has indefinitely postponed Donald Trump's trial over claims that he illegally kept classified documents after leaving office. It had previously been scheduled to begin in just under 2 weeks in Florida.
Well, lucky him, that's one down. The decision has been made due to still unresolved issues in the case because the former president is currently attending this separate trial over hush money allegations in New York.
Well, let's get into all of that with criminal defence attorney Joseph Tully. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us this morning from San Francisco. I mean, extraordinary is the only word I can think of, really, to describe what we heard, what we saw. Box office, I suppose, is one way of describing it, but almost, I mean, unedifying is another word I suppose you could use. But the point is, does it change anything? You know, his sex life, what went on behind the scenes, that was all fascinating, I suppose, to some people. But was it illegal? I'm sure we'll find that out from this trial, whether or not that he was in some way breaking the law.
Well, thank you both for having me. I would go with salacious in terms of describing the testimony today, but you're exactly right. Legally speaking, the significance was very, very small. If anything, it goes to bolster, it went to establish the fact that, yes, they indeed had sex. The prosecution wants that fact in. Donald Trump has denied it, so it bolsters Stormy Daniels' credibility on that point and diminishes Donald Trump's credibility on that point. For the prosecution, it's a win because they get to muddy him up in front of the jury. But really, in terms of can the prosecution meet the elements of the crime, this had very little legal significance.
So tell us about the incident where the judge was basically telling Stormy Daniels not to be so graphic and explicit in her liaisons with Donald Trump. They basically said it wasn't necessary, the level of detail she was going into.
Sure. So anytime you have a trial, the judge has to weigh the probative value of a fact versus the prejudicial effect of that. And if something is more prejudicial than it is probative, the judge has to keep it out. The defense, prior to her taking the stand, warned the judge and objected, and the judge brushed them off and just said, go ahead and have at it. And we had the floodgates open, and you had a porn star up there trying to get out as much salacious details as she could to kind of get in her digs at Donald Trump and to humiliate him on a world stage. So the judge a few times did try to keep that down, but at the end, the defense objected and asked for a mistrial, which the judge denied, and basically threw it back on the defense team, saying, you should have objected more.
Well, some of the details that we learned yesterday, and I'm skipping over the worst ones, but she reminisced teasing him for his silk pyjamas. She thought it was strange that he took such an interest in the business operations of the porn industry, called her High Bunch. He said that Melania, his wife, is very beautiful and that they sleep in separate rooms, and talked about this now infamous incident where she spanked him with a rolled-up copy of Forbes magazine. How is this going down with the Conservative media? And I suppose I'm talking about the female, church-going, Republican, sort of God-fearing group of people who he will need to vote him into power if he wants to be president of the United States again.
Sure, yes, I do think that was one of the underlying goals of this testimony, was to sort of drive a wedge between Trump and the conservative Christian movement who support him. I don't think Donald Trump has ever portrayed himself as a perfect man, and sort of what I see in the media and what I see these groups saying is that, look, he's not a perfect man, but sometimes God calls on imperfect people to do his will. So I don't think it's having the effect that some would have thought. I think, if anything, it's making him more of an underdog, and people have more compassion for him in terms of, wow, you're really going through it. They're really attacking you unfairly.
We saw it with the Access Hollywood tapes during the 2016 presidential election. Everyone thinking that it would be a campaign killer, but in actual fact, it just galvanised the so-called MAGA base. Joseph, just very briefly, if Trump is convicted in any of these criminal or civil trials, will he still be allowed to stand for president?
Yes, there's no requirement that a felony conviction does not disqualify you from being president. So this will have no effect on his presidency if he were to win.
Got it. OK. Joseph Tully, thanks very much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we couldn't be introducing a more different character now. We've got the lovely Paul Coit in the studio this morning with all the sports
Chalk and
news.
cheese, eh?
Chalk and cheese.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, what a juxtaposition putting you right next to that.
Yeah. I've never read Forbes in my life. Yes.
Before you get started,
yes, sir.
The last time I saw you was before Spurs played Arsenal.
Yeah, and you're an Arsenal fan, aren't you?
Can we just remind the viewers what the score was that day?
Ooh.
He's going there, Paul. He's going
there. Was it 3-0 to the Arsenal?
Yes, it could have been. Yes,
interesting.
Are you an Arsenal fan by any chance?
I am.
Oh, right, OK.
But
Well, now we've got that out of the way.
We do need you to do a job against City, please. So pull
sorry,
your socks up.
I can't do that now. No, I can't. We won't be beating Manchester City now. Before you said that, we were going to go out and try and beat Man City to try and help Arsenal. Now you've said that,
right.
I'm not going to be able to help in any way.
OK, what else is going on?
Paris Saint-Germain versus Dortmund in the second leg of the semi-final of the Champions League. Paris Saint-Germain, who desperately want to win the Champions League. They're out again because Dortmund beat them 1-0, which is 2-0 on aggregate. So, I mean, it is a surprise. Dortmund have gone over to Paris and they've beaten them there. And they're fifth. They were fifth in the Bundesliga. So really nothing expected of Dortmund this year. That's Mats Hummels, who's probably older than I am, that actually scored the goal there for Dortmund. And the yellow wall went crazy. Although the part of the Parc des Princes where they played, there was only a small amount, if you see the size of the stadium, of the Dortmund fans. Now, they sing a song, and I will try and translate the whole thing for you. Now, look, let's see them in action here. Now, this is them celebrating with the Dortmund players. This is straight after the game. fans are some of the nicest fans I have ever met. Whenever I've seen them, whenever I've met them, they're all friendly, they're just out to have a great time. So they sing a song, and it's about a German or a Dortmund fan who then goes, this is the song I would translate.
Please do. You sing it while you translate it. Oh, gosh.
Anyway, he hands in a sick note, then he says that his grandfather's died. Yeah, it's quite a moving song. And then he takes over time, then he's sacked from his job, and then he sings, who cares, Borussia Dortmund are playing abroad. So that's the basis of the song.
Wow.
It translates, maybe it rhymes, maybe it's better in German than it is in English.
I like a little folk story.
But it is a folk song, and it's a big song with the Dortmund fans, and that was what the players were joining.
Sounds a bit more sophisticated than the chants you hear on the terraces here in...
well, at Arsenal, yes, I know, yeah, sure, but not at Spurs. But the last time Borussia Dortmund were in the Champions League final was 2013, and it was at Wembley Stadium, which is where it is this year, and the team they played was Bayern Munich, who will play Real Madrid tonight. So history could...
And we have some English interest in Dortmund. Sancho, he's...
Jadon Sancho. Yeah, I mean, well, Jadon Sancho, who is a Manchester United player who was at Dortmund, so he's gone over there and he's just been great again. Whereas Manchester United,
terrible.
It was a disaster. But then we're looking at Erik ten Hag, because I was talking about him earlier, and Erik ten Hag, and I'm calling him a dead man walking, which is pretty much, I think everybody agrees he is. Now, he's had this big fallout with Jadon Sancho, so Jadon's probably over in Germany, whether he thinks I'd rather stay here because it's working for me, and it always has. But if he goes back to Manchester United, he's going to want Erik ten Hag to go. So it's whether Erik ten Hag is going to be there.
Who is backing ten Hag at this point?
I don't know. I think probably his wife, maybe. And
well, I don't know why, because
maybe...
even if he gets sacked, he still gets his salary, doesn't he, for ages? So maybe she'd prefer, or maybe she doesn't want him around. Who knows?
Do we need the hassle? Maybe it's time for me to go. But it's been said that he won't be fired yet after losing 4-0 at Crystal Palace. They're still going to keep him until the FA Cup final, which is in a couple of weeks, which is where Manchester United will play Manchester City, and a lot of Manchester United fans are fearing it.
Would that be enough to save him? I know the league performance has been dire, but would an FA Cup win be enough?
I don't think so, because often when you get managers in situations, and you'll get... It often happens when they're fired. Sometimes you get managers that are fired after a really great result against a bigger team, and you think, why on earth were they fired then? It's usually because the board are thinking, you know what we'll do? We'll wait until after we get spanked by this team, which we expect. So I think what they'll do is just wait for the FA Cup final. I don't know whether they'll expect to win it. I doubt it. So then they'll expect that probably he will lose the final and then he'll go. But he'll probably just see it till the end of the season.
And so Jim Ratcliffe the other day saying, absolutely slamming the state of the club, saying that it was just unhygienic, dirty, messy.
I know.
I mean, it was an extraordinary intervention.
Yeah, messy is what they probably want at Manchester United, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. Yeah. But it needs a big change, and whoever goes in is probably on a, it's a poison chalice. It really is to go in at Manchester United.
Who'd have thought?
I know. We got time for a little baseball?
Oh, go on then.
Little baseball. This is something that happened yesterday over in Kansas City. The Kansas City Royals against the Milwaukee Brewers. And anyway, it's in Kansas City. Milwaukee Brewers stepping up to bat. Have a look at this. And this is someone in the crowd. Now, if it's a cricket, you've got to throw the ball back. Now, look at the ball. Comes for a home run. Straight over the top. Now, there's a guy at the back, jumps up and leaps up and catches it. Now, look at him. Look at him. Honestly, loves it. Can't help himself.
Saved it from the waterfall as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. Look at the waterfall there at the background. So he's wearing an Admirals ice hockey shirt, which is another Milwaukee side. But look, it can't contain himself. Often, like I say, in cricket, they'd throw the ball back, but in baseball, I think they get to keep it.
Yeah, they get to keep it. And there's so many videos online, I'm not sure if you've seen them, but of grown men
fighting off kids.
Swiping from young kids the ball and leaving the kids in tears. I mean, some of the videos doing the rounds are extraordinary.
But I'm wondering if he's jumping around like that because it really hurt. Because if I caught a ball that had been thrown that far, there's probably... Ow, he's going, ouch, ouch!
I'm not being funny, but you wouldn't guess he was an American man, would you, the way he's jumping around?
No, exactly. More British, that behaviour.
I know. You just stand there and go, thank you very much, hand it over.
It hurt.
But like when you said, Ben, is that when you get people will take the baseball, is that sometimes if it's an important... If it's like someone that's breaking a record for home runs or something similar like that, if they catch the baseball itself can be worth millions of dollars. So if they catch it, it's like, I don't care if the kid's in the way, I'm going to keep the ball, because if you can sell it, you're going to make a lot of money.
College fund sorted right there.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, maybe we should
give
go
the
into
kid
those.
give the kid $5 and say, sorry,
I've got quite long arms. I'll probably do quite well.
You'd be all right.
Got lanky arms. Well,
Right,
thanks,
Paul,
I'd nudge
thank
you out the way,
very
Ben,
much.
you know I would.
You'd be getting really violent.
Especially after that
both of you.
Give you an elbow.
Oh, dear.
I'll give you a Dennis Bergkamp style elbow.
We'll see, OK.
Right, speaking of which...
tension in here.
Enough, we're done. See you in a bit, Paul. Thank you so much. We're going to go through the papers in just a moment. Stop it. With the lovely Norman Baker and Dr. Renee Hundekamp, and they'll be going through the papers with us. See you in a sec.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M40 in Warwickshire is closed northbound from junction 12 at Gaydon to 14 at Leamington after an accident. There are delays as you divert. There's disruption to train services again today because of industrial action affecting a number of routes, particularly affecting Avanti West Coast services, Chiltern Railways, Cross Country, East Midlands Railway, Great Western Railway, Heathrow Express, and the North Western and West Midlands Railway, with no service on some routes, severely reduced service on some others. And a number of other train services are also affected by an overtime ban this week. Now, in Essex, the A121 is partly blocked by an accident on Woodridden Hill in Epping Forest, causing queues, and on the M26 in Kent, there are westbound queues towards the M25 because of roadworks. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back at 6:42. We're taking a look at the front pages this morning. This is how they're shaping up this Wednesday morning. The Telegraph is leading with children facing being kicked off social media under plans for tougher age checks.
The Guardian says reports on the Garrick Club members voting to lift the 193-year-old ban on women joining the club. Arthur, it's extraordinary, that one.
The Daily Mail says Prince Harry's been forced to admit that the King is too busy to see him as he visits the UK for the Invictus Games.
The Express leads on senior Tories claiming migrants do not boost economic growth.
And here's the Mirror. It says that pubs will stay open until 1 a.m. on the semi-final and final nights of Euro 2024.
Surely they should be open that late anyway. What time do they close?
Exactly. I don't know. I haven't been in a pub past 11 o'clock for a long time. We're going through the papers this morning in the wonderful company of Norman Baker and Dr. Renee Hundekamp. Welcome to both of you. Thank you very much indeed. Renee, let's start with you. This is our top story as well this morning, that Britain is leading the charge to keep the young safe online. Now, we've talked about this issue before in the past, but is this, I mean, it's certainly the right step in the right direction, but is it going to go far enough? Will it work?
I just can't help but read this and just hear blah, 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 you know, another stick-in plaster over a massive problem that actually the people that need to get a grip of this are parents, because that's where these kids are looking at phones, they're being given phones. I sat in the cinema on Monday next to a 9-year-old who every 30 seconds checked his smartphone next to me. You know, parents need to step up to the plate here. The evidence is clear. We are ruining our children with access to online space. We need to step back. If you were going to the doctors and they're saying to you that your cough is because of your smoking, you would stop smoking, or hopefully you would. You know, we know what's ruining our children. Take the phones away. Don't give it to them till they're at least 16. Play with them.
16, that sounds, some would argue that sounds quite late because they be missing out on all the technological education and, you know...
You can do that at home. You can do that at home with them. So my daughter has access to the internet for 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening. Between that, she never sees a phone, she never sees a screen, nor will she. This is for parents to step up. Yes, the government, it's good. It's good that they're doing it. And these algorithms are disgusting. They're not just TikTok, as it says in the story. They're all of them. Anybody who wants to know more about this should watch Social Dilemma, which shows you how these algorithms drag your children into places where you don't want them to be.
Yeah, because they get the dopamine hits, and none of the tech giants' children have access to it as well, which I think speaks volumes. But I'm not sure if I agree with you, Renee, about putting all of this on parents, because parents that I speak to feel like they're up against a tidal wave of peer pressure from the kids who don't know any better. They don't want their child to be bullied for being the only one that doesn't have one. And there's that balance between trying not to make sure they're left out from those technological developments and all the rest of it that the kids are telling them are the case, and obviously the risks and harms. And I just hear it time and again that parents are very concerned but want a united front on this from schools, from the government, from Ofcom, from the tech giants, but it shouldn't just be down to parents.
Of course, but all of this starts at home. You know, why are you giving your 9-year-old a smartphone? You know, that's the first point. And, you know, I hear this all the time. People say to me online, oh, you'll be responsible for your daughter being bullied. That's not my problem. That's the bully's problem. I'm going to make sure my daughter is brought up without this constant assault on her mind that is going to drive her to places where I don't want her to be.
Is it going to work, do you think, Norman?
I hope so, but I suspect not. I mean, it is being billed as the most inventive and serious attempt to control what's online from any country in the world, and if the government's doing that, then fair credit to them for taking that approach. The reality is that there are ways round various bans and restrictions which could be found, and the other thing is that the tech companies themselves, of course, are amoral in the sense that they don't really care who watches what. They're interested in making money, which is why the important aspect of the story is the ability to levy huge fines on these companies.
10% of their global revenue, would that be enough to tell them to pull their socks up?
I think so. If you get 1 or 2 fines which are actually of that level, then they will start thinking again. As always, people will do things, they'll follow the pocket, they'll follow the money. If the money's going to disappear because of their actions, they'll change policy.
But does Ofcom have a good record for enforcing fines or for, you know, I don't know, it's questionable whether or not Ofcom has the teeth to take on the tech giants, even though they've been given the powers to say, what, 18K?
And when they're making so much money, they actually will write those fines into their business plan, just like the drug companies do, that it doesn't matter if the fine is 10% because we're going to make 90% over that. You know, they'll write it in. They're not going to give up something that's making them so much money.
And you make a good point, Renee, about bullying, because when I was a kid, if you were going to get bullied, you were bullied at school, and as soon as you came home, that was your refuge. It subsided for a while.
Which kids don't have now.
These days, it's constant. On WhatsApp, they're being added to groups, there's images being shared, it's just non-stop.
So the bullies follow them home and follow them into their bedroom, which is why they sit there so sad and so unhappy.
And also, as a dad of 2 boys, there's been so many studies, so many documentaries about the warped perception of sex for young people. Girls now are growing up thinking that their first time having sex is, you know, something akin to a porn movie, because that's what boys are watching. It's terrifying as a parent.
Yeah, and that porn increasingly violent and degrading. It's an absolute cesspit. It's a worry. Right, let's move on to another story. This is an interesting, bizarre story to be talking about in 2024. Garrett Club did vote last night, Norman, to allow female members. And there were some interesting people speaking up for the ladies, people like Stephen Fry and others.
Well, the interesting question for me is whether they were speaking up for the ladies, as you put it, 5 years ago, or whether they weren't, or whether they're just doing this now because The Guardian ran a story exposing the membership and the fact that this particular ban existed. I mean, I have to say that I don't particularly worry whether there's a ban or not, because, you know, if an organisation wants to have a one-sex policy, then I don't see anything wrong with that, personally.
But why should a long-standing establishment be forced and be bounced into changing their rules?
Well, precisely, that's the point I'm making.
For it
I know, but they're probably feeling under pressure, morally obliged.
Well, look, that's the point. They wouldn't have done this unless I had been exposing The Guardian about a month ago, saying this was in place and how dreadful it was, and exposing the membership list, or some of it, from the Garrett Club. And therefore, they felt they're obliged now to take action in order to defend their reputation. But what I'm saying is, I don't particularly feel obliged to say this should happen. If they want to have a policy of only having men in there, I don't see a problem with that.
I mean, I suppose the counter-argument is that, that obviously you need to have safe spaces, gender-specific spaces in toilets, in hospitals, but whether or not you should be socialising, excluding a certain group is fairly abhorrent.
But if you're a private organisation, why do you have to... Why can't you just set your own rules?
Yeah, Renee, can men not have their own private spaces?
I think men should have their own private spaces, and I think as much as I fight for women's protected spaces, I fight for it for men too. There's a reason these clubs have existed, and yes, there might be some business deals done there, but also men need places where they can go and discuss things with other men privately and in their own space. And I think, women mix with men in every single place now, in the workplace, on the factory floor, wherever it is. Let the men have something which is a bastion of English culture. It's just another part of culture that we're getting rid of, and let them have their space.
But we're not getting rid of it; they're getting rid of it. The vote.
Well, they're not.
They've
Been bullied.
I just think it's very easy for us all to say that this has been forced upon them. They've chosen to do this themselves.
They've chosen to do it. The people that didn't want it have left, so they've lost members because of it. I think, again, it is pressure from the media to do it because it looks like it's another virtue signalling box ticked. And I think, how many women really want to be there? I've been to the Garrett Club as a guest, so there are women there. Women do go in there. It's not totally male. I think this is nonsense, and I think we should leave our men's spaces alone as much as we should our women.
And how many men want to go there? I don't want to become a member of the Garrett Club. Thank you very much.
I was going to ask you, Norman, when you were a government minister, did you ever frequent the Carlton Club or any of these private...
Carlton Club? No, certainly not. No, I'm not of that nature at all. I was a member of the Groucho Club, which is a arty one down in where is it, Frith Street? That was me.
There we go. Harry's reunion hope has been dashed, Renee, in front of quite a few of the papers. 3 of the papers this morning: the Metro, the Sun, the Sun and the Mail. I mean, if he wanted to find time, the King surely would find time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I couldn't care very much about this story, I have to confess.
Me neither.
But, yeah, I think if the King really wanted to find time, of course he would find time. I think it's very sad, because I think it's always sad when a family obviously has a big rift in it like this. But I think it says much to how little they trust Harry to actually come over, speak to any of them and not go and then
except they met last time that he was over. So has something changed? And I suppose that's the
It was only 30 minutes to do it last time, which was he was given a limited amount of time, and no doubt the King was very careful what he said, so it didn't appear in the US press the next day. They don't trust what he'll do. They don't trust him to keep confidences. It's very sad, really, but that's how things are.
I think sometimes illness makes people close ranks, and clearly with Kate and the King, they've actually closed the ranks. They're very close. They're very happy in each other's company. Maybe they weren't that enamoured by the messaging that they were getting from the States when it was announced that they were ill. It was a bit slow to come, any, we wish them well, etc. And I just think it's very sad.
It is sad. People say life's too short, just bury the hatchet. But then I always say as well, on the flip side, life is short, so why should you have to tolerate such torrid behaviour? I mean, what Harry and Meghan did was atrocious.
Disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful.
They literally tried, maybe are still trying, arguably, to bring down the royal family. The comments about his wife, Camilla, calling her a wicked stepmother. I mean, it's just...
Look, I think everyone makes mistakes. If Harry had come and said sorry and was contrite, then that's a totally different matter, and I could forgive anyone if they're sorry. But I think the problem is that he's been saying he's waiting for an apology himself.
He wants it.
I think he's pulled in 2 directions, because he wants to make things up with his family that Meghan clearly doesn't, and he wants to be loyal to her, and he's stuck in the middle.
So, poor Harry.
Yes, in a way.
OK, didn't expect to end on that note. Let's take a look, shall we? Where should we go? Should we do something a bit lighter now? Well, I was going to say lighter.
Stormy Daniels.
Quite serious. Yeah, let's do some Stormy, shall we, Norman? And this, again, is raising eyebrows, the alleged sexual exploits of wannabe returnee to the White House.
Well, I mean, it's salacious stuff, isn't it, that you hear on the television, and some of the reports about what's been the line of questioning which has been pursued. I mean, it's all very gratuitous in some way, and actually not terribly central to the case, because the case doesn't rely on whether or not he had an affair with or sexual encounter with Stormy Daniels. It relies on whether or not there was falsification of business records as a consequence. So, in a sense, it was a diversion, what happened yesterday. I suppose the issue is whether or not the jury feels sympathy for Donald Trump, that this is all dragged through the courts, or whether they feel he's a nasty person and their opinion of him weakens.
Renee, he was accused of falling asleep some days ago during the trial, and he said, "I was just resting my beautiful blue eyes."
Yeah, I mean, look, you've got to laugh, haven't you? He's a showman, isn't he? There's nothing else. I do wonder with this, actually, if this may turn on the fact that people don't appreciate that the Americans are actually very prudish as a nation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
They really are. And I wonder if some of this detail that's coming out now in court will run the wrong way with that jury, because it will be making their hairs on the back of their neck stand up. But we will see. I mean, it's not very, edifying, is it, of somebody who wants to take office again? But then you could say that it's a political thing. He's being dragged through the courts when other presidents have lots of things in their closets that haven't been dragged through the courts. It's just a mess, isn't it?
Yeah, although, Americans prudish in one sense. There's no childhood nudity or anything, that sort of sweet innocence that we all have of kids on the beach, that everybody's covered up and it's sort of as if children are sexualised. But they're the ones that have sold sex around the world.
Oh, more than anyone.
To everyone. But as you say, will it wash? I mean, we all heard what he said about grabbing a woman by the genitalia in 2016, and that didn't seem to deter
I don't
him.
think his base will care. They'll see it as a political motivated. I mean, the New York Attorney General, Alvin Bragg, a massive Democrat, they'll just see it as a political persecution.
But will the jury? All to play for. We will see. And we'll say goodbye to you both, Norman and Renee. See you both again just after 7:30. But for now, let's get a check on the forecast. It was a bit misty and foggy as I was coming in this morning, but will it be another beautiful day? Annie Shuttleworth will tell us.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. It should be a dry day for most of us. There's a bit of a cloudier start across the east coast. That's because some clouds pulled in overnight. That should slowly start to burn back throughout this morning and into the afternoon. There could also be some cloudier skies across western coasts into this afternoon, but I think many inland areas will see some long-lived sunshine. It will feel quite warm in the sunshine. However, notice across northwestern areas of Scotland, we're starting to see some rain approach through this afternoon. That'll mainly be restricted to the Western Isles, perhaps parts of the Highlands, and it will feel a little bit cooler here with a bit of a breeze, but in the sunshine, highs of 21 degrees are expected this afternoon, so a similar feel to yesterday. Through this evening, that rain will continue to persist across the far northwest, turning heavy at times, but it will remain restricted to the north of Scotland. Elsewhere, it should stay dry overnight, but again, we could see some mist and fog starting to develop. Some drizzly rain is also possible over parts of the Pennines and southern Scotland. Should be another fairly mild night, despite any clearer skies. So a bright start for many areas of the UK on Thursday, perhaps some mist and fog that will be fairly quick to clear, and it's going to be another dry, bright and sunny day on Thursday. However, across the far northwest of Scotland, still skies will remain cloudier. Rain should start to ease, though, as you head towards the afternoon, with some brightness developing here as well. But in the sunshine, highs of 22 or 23 degrees, so rather warm with high UV levels.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the Glasgow subway, there's no service on the outer circle after a train broke down. There's widespread disruption to a number of train services in England today because of industrial action affecting Avanti West Coast, Chiltern, Cross Country, East Midlands, Great Western, Heathrow Express, London North Western and West Midlands railway services. No service on a number of routes, a severely reduced service on some others. Now, the M40 in Warwickshire is closed northbound from junction 12 at Gaydon to 14 at Leamington after an accident causing delays. The M26 in Kent, there are westbound queues towards the M25 because of roadworks. Also in Kent, the A21 is blocked northbound by an accident between Tunbridge Wells and Tunbridge, causing queues. And people arriving into UK airports this morning may experience delays at border control after technical problems last night. Outbound passengers, though, shouldn't be affected. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. But you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Di Piero bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Very good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock on Wednesday, May the 8th. This is Breakfast with Isabel Webster and me, Ben Leo.
And here's what's leading the news this morning. Amid a rise in young people being bullied online, Ofcom is set to get tough, introducing new age restrictions to use social media.
Prince Harry's back in the UK to celebrate 10 years of his Invictus Games charity today, but why has he been snubbed by his father, the King?
The UK warns Israel over the risk of war crimes in Rafah, as UNICEF says 600,000 children face catastrophe in the region.
And chaos at our airports as a nationwide e-gate glitch left tens of thousands stranded in terminals. Were you affected? Let us know. gbnews.com/you'll say.
As more details of the Ministry of Defence hack are revealed, should we be getting tougher on China? We'll be debating that later in the programme.
And in the sport, Borussia Dortmund beat Paris Saint-Germain again last night in the semi-final, second leg of the Champions League, so they're going to be in the final. But who will they play? Could it be all German again? It's going to be Bayern Munich, and they're going to be playing Real Madrid, currently 2-2, and that happens at the Bernabeu tonight. Nottingham Forest have lost their appeal to lose points in the Premier League. And exciting news, the Olympic flame arrives in France today.
Good morning. Another day of sunny and bright weather for many of us, but will that sunshine last until tomorrow? You can find out all the details with me a little later on.
So, plenty to get stuck into this morning, not least Harry being snubbed by his dad.
Yeah.
We've touched on it previously. Sad, isn't it?
It is really sad, but, you know, perhaps he's only got himself to blame. One sense is he's a little bit stuck in the middle between his wife and his family. Will they ever...
Do you think he'll ever come back? Because there's an argument that one day he'll come back to London with his tail between his legs.
I'm an optimist, so I think that it will all be sorted, eventually.
Crossed. All right, well, let's move on. New rules this morning, online rules, to Labour's push to fix the NHS waiting time. So we're joined now by Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth, MP. Good morning, Jonathan. So the Labour position, it's easy to shout from the sidelines, but your position, Jonathan, is that waiting times, of course, in the gutter. But what are you going to do to sort it out?
Well, of course, the analysis that we've released today indicate that on virtually all of their targets, in fact all of their targets, the vast majority of NHS trusts, that's the organisations who run the hospitals, have completely failed to miss their targets on waiting times for operations. And this is a consequence of 14 years of the Conservatives driving our NHS into the ground. So what's Labour's solution? We would introduce a proper tax on the very super wealthy non-DOMs, and we would use the proceeds from that to fund extra appointments, 2 million extra appointments a year in our NHS, so we can start driving those waiting times down. So that if you're waiting for a hip replacement or a knee replacement or hernia perhaps, a cataract operation you need, you can get your operations on time. Too many people are waiting in pain and agony at the moment for an operation after 14 years of the Conservatives.
Yeah, and I suppose if you want to point to track records, you can look to how Labour-run Wales is doing on the NHS. How are waiting times faring there?
I tell you a track record I can point to. The last Labour government brought waiting times down from 18 months to 18 weeks. That's the difference a Labour government at Westminster makes on the National Health Service. And for all your viewers who are struggling this morning to get a GP appointment when the GP phone lines open at 8 o'clock, struggling to see an NHS dentist, as you know you can't see an NHS dentist for love nor money, or waiting in pain for an operation, Our message is a Labour government is going to start rebuilding our NHS, 2 million extra appointments a year in the NHS, more dentistry appointments, more mental health appointments, more appointments for knees and hip operations. That's the difference a Labour government will make.
It's not exactly a ringing endorsement for devolution, then, if it'll only work under Labour if it's coming out of Westminster. It doesn't work in Wales, where they're running their own show, because we all know the NHS is a disaster in Wales.
Well, there are different measurements in Wales, but of course, when you're running the National Health Service at Westminster, you're responsible for the overall budgeting, you're responsible for the overall staffing levels. One of the issues we've had in the NHS over these last 14 years is that we simply haven't had the staff because the training places for nurses were cut back very early on by George Osborne, for example. That's impacted on the NHS in Wales. So when we get a Labour government putting that extra investment in, driving up standards, demanding reform across the board in the NHS, making real use of technology and the advances that digital technologies would bring into the NHS, and indeed AI. You can do much more procedures and diagnostics by the use of AI. You can really transform the National Health Service for the 21st century. At the moment, it's on its knees after 14 years of the Conservatives.
Yeah, Jonathan, some would argue the elephant in the room is the fact that the Tories have overseen, uncontrolled mass migration, a city the size of Birmingham every 2 years. Labour hasn't said what they're going to do about that. I mean, in fact, it will probably get worse, some would argue. So when you've got open borders like that and local services, the NHS, schools, GPs aren't being funded properly, how are you going to sort that out when you're not addressing the key issue, which is migration, putting pressure on all those services?
Well, it's absolutely chaos at the borders, isn't it? We were supposed to have order at the borders, and it's been the exact opposite, with the numbers of people crossing on boats, making those journeys across the channel because people smugglers are exploiting them. You've got to go after those criminal gangs in a proper way. Use terrorist-style laws to go after them. Stop being the soft touch on these criminal gangs that we've seen. But I tell you what is also going to ruin and be a problem for the NHS. The government announced yesterday that it is their policy, not an ambition, not a long-term aim, but their policy to abolish national insurance. That leaves them with a £46 billion black hole in their plans. It either means taxing pensioners more or it means cutting the NHS. And Jeremy Hunt, who told pensioners to wait longer for a hip operation or a knee operation because he said it wasn't a priority, Jeremy Hunt is now going to cut the NHS or he's going to tax pensioners more. That's the big threat at this next general election.
I think what's been really interesting about Wes Streeting and his plans to reform is his openness about using the private sector to help ease a lot of the pressure on the NHS. I just can't get my head around why, on the one hand, it's OK to take advantage and use the private sector when it comes to health, but when it comes to education, where people are paying their taxes still, but then using private schools, you want to penalise those people. In actual fact, instead of using the private sector to ease the state, you want to make that situation worse.
Well, that's a question about the taxation regime. And as you know, because the Conservatives ran the economy off a cliff, because they played fast and loose with the public finances,
you want to
they've made a
children.
mess of the public finances, and people are paying more on their mortgage. You've got to take some tough taxation decisions. And if we tax those private schools, the proceeds of that money is going to go into an expansion of mental health support in schools, and it's going to help us fund some of our other plans to recruit more teachers in schools, for the schools that the vast majority of GB News viewers' children go to.
Yes, go on.
Jonathan, just talking about Wes Streeting, what's your thoughts on his language over the weekend off the back of the election results, calling voters of Susan Hall, the London mayoral candidate, white supremacists and Islamophobes? Is that the kind of language we expect from a government in waiting?
Well, people, in the heat of an election campaign say things, but I am pleased that we won, Sadiq Khan won in London and beat Susan Hall. Convincingly, actually. It was a very convincing victory, wasn't it, when perhaps people were suggesting that the Conservatives were going to win that. And if you look at some of the other races that happened last week, North Yorkshire, which is Rishi Sunak's backyard.
Jonathan, I'm asking you about Wes Streeting's language, not the election results.
Yeah, I've said, it is linked to the election, and I just said it's people say things in the heat of the moment. But on those elections, I think it shows that, yes, Labour was winning the argument, but the next general election is a real contest. The next general election is a real competition between whether you want a Labour government and changing this country, or whether you want to continue with Conservative failure. But it is going to be a real contest, that next general election. but we're going to continue to make the arguments. We're going to continue to do all we can to win the trust of the British people, including GB News viewers. And we're going to talk more about how we're going to fix the NHS, how if you're a young person struggling to get on the housing ladder, how we're going to build more homes for young people so they can realise that dream of home ownership, how children going to our primary schools will have access to a breakfast club in every primary school, and how we're going to cut energy bills for good.
Jonathan, one final quick question, very briefly, apologies. There seems to be a consensus on social media from Labour MPs in recent days about the situation in Rafah in Gaza. That's a stark contrast to some of the behaviour we've seen in recent months. Are you bowing down to these 18 demands from the Muslim vote?
No, let me be absolutely clear. We have said quite rightly for some time now that a military offensive into Rafah would be catastrophic. I think half the children in Gaza are in this part of the Gaza Strip. We've already seen thousands of people lose their lives, killed, many women and children. I've been calling for some time now for an immediate ceasefire. I am warning against this intervention, this offensive into Rafah. We also need the access for humanitarian aid. Yes, we also need the hostages released, but there is a catastrophe facing us, and the international community need to work to bring about that immediate ceasefire and bring an end to this horrendous conflict.
So do you think Labour would bow down to any of those 18 demands, one being to cut all military ties with Israel, another changing the definition of extremism that Michael Gove brought in? Do you foresee any of those demands being adhered to by Sir Keir Starmer?
Well, I don't know what the particular demands you are, but I'll go off and look into them. But we do not bow down to whatever, campaign groups. We are acting in what we think is the correct way, and we have been calling for an immediate ceasefire for some time. We've been warning against an offensive into Rafah. We've been calling for hostages to be freed, and we've been calling for proper humanitarian assistance to free into that part of the world. This is a catastrophe. Thousands of people have lost their lives, including women and children. We've got to work internationally to bring about peace and a ceasefire.
OK. Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth, always a pleasure. Thanks very much indeed for joining us here on GB News.
Now, today is the 10-year anniversary of the Invictus Games, and the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, he's in the UK to celebrate a service of Thanksgiving at St Paul's Cathedral later today.
Well, the charity was founded by Prince Harry back in 2014 to support veterans and to provide them with support after they leave the armed forces.
And away from the drama of the royal family and whether the King and Harry will meet, we can forget how important Invictus is and all the good work it does for veterans.
So joining us now is Senior Statutory Grants Officer for the Armed Forces charity, Mandy Small. Good morning, Mandy. It's absolutely true, isn't it? Because there's so much almost psychodrama around the royals and their own relationships that, sadly, I think the Invictus Games can sometimes be overshadowed, and because a lot of people view Prince Harry as being a little bit spoilt, they can forget what an incredible job he's done with this. So just tell us about your first-hand experience of being involved with it and why we should all be celebrating 10 years of it.
I mean, I've never actually competed in the Invictus Games. I went to the Veterans Games and represented SAFA a couple of years ago, which is Invictus Games, but on a smaller scale.
OK.
And I saw exactly how important that was for myself. I mean, I was injured in Iraq in 2007. And normally I'm quite isolated and I hide myself away. And for me, that was massive because I was back in the brotherhood. I was back in the armed forces community. And the effect that had on my mental health was absolutely amazing. So I've got friends that compete in the Invictus Games, and I've seen how it's helped with their recovery. And working for SAFA, we have people that we've helped over the last few years that compete, and they always come back to us and they say how amazing the experience is. And I think you're right. We hear all these other things about Prince Harry, but do you know what he started was just absolutely amazing. And I think it's safe to say that he's saved so many lives over the years through doing the Invictus Games.
How is Prince Harry perceived by military veterans? Because, of course, he used to be cream of the crop some years ago before he met Meghan. Lots of patronages or different charities and so on. And, of course, he's got a stellar military record himself. Has that changed amid all the controversy in recent years?
I don't know. I can't really sort of comment on other people's opinions of him.
What about your opinion, though?
My opinion, you know what? He served the same as the rest of us. He wrote a blank cheque for this country, and I don't think that should be forgotten. You know, whatever's gone on in the past few years is his choice as such, and he's made decisions for his own reasons. But, you know, I'll always have a special place in my heart for him because he served alongside the rest of us.
Yeah, and he did it in an exemplary fashion as well. Do you think enough is done in this country, aside from what Prince Harry has done, to support veterans like yourselves who've had, you know, life-changing implications and, you know, paid the ultimate price, really, you know, putting your life on the line to serve Queen and country at the time, King and country now? Could we do more to honour and protect them?
I think we could always do more. Yeah, I lost my husband to suicide 7.5 years ago after serving 21 years in the army. And he was very much old school in that you didn't talk about your mental health. And obviously that's changed massively the last few years. And there are some wonderful charities out there. SAFA, you know, we've been around since 1885. And last year alone, we helped more than 59,000 people, including the Armed Forces community families, which is just massive. And there is help out there. And I would say to anyone, if you're struggling, the hardest part of getting help is making that initial phone call. You know, once you've done that, then you've got support alongside you every step of the way, which is massive. You know, the help we got from SAFA when we lost Chris, it not only changed our lives, it saved my life. And that can't be underestimated. So we can always do more as a country, always.
Do you think we need to be... Sorry to interject, man. Do you think we need to be more akin to, say, the US, where their veterans are national heroes in every sense of the word? Yeah,
you know, I think the States have got it right. Even as British veterans, when we go out there, we're treated like that. But again, you know, it's a very fine line, isn't it? Because I know as a veteran myself, I don't see myself as a hero. I was just very lucky to have a job that I love.
Yeah, well, we see you as a hero, and we see your late husband as a hero. He served 21 years deploying to every conflict zone during that time and left behind you and, at the time of his death, an 8-year-old son. We are so sorry for your loss, and incredibly brave of you to come on and talk to us about it all this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Mandy.
Thank you.
Oh, puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
It does.
A little bit.
It does, and I love America as a country, and one thing I really admire about them is the way they respect and celebrate their veterans.
Yeah, but I tell you what, you go and talk to anybody who's suffering homelessness in the United States, and a huge proportion of those are veterans as well. Yeah. And, you know, there are complicated issues around, you know, serving, mental health crises, post-traumatic stress, alcoholism often linked to that.
Yeah.
Is there enough support in the United States, even if they do have hero status? It's a really difficult issue. But I do think if we want to recruit the best in the world to serve in our armed forces, we have to look after them.
Yeah.
Once they leave.
Johnny Mercer is doing some good work here, and of course, you know, for all Harry's controversy and perceived faults, he is doing some great work with Invictus.
Yeah, well, and Johnny Mercer's also courting controversy, isn't he? Because he's facing questions about whether or not he should be protecting whistleblowers, and we will be talking about that a little bit later on in the programme. But for now, let's turn our attention to Israel. The Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, has warned that the UK is at risk of committing war crimes in Rafah if they continue their latest, I think they mean Israel there, continue their latest offence without a credible plan to protect civilians.
And it comes as the United States has also urged Israel to accept a ceasefire deal with Hamas. Global charity UNICEF has also warned the ground incursion into Rafah will pose a catastrophic risk to the 600,000 children taking shelter in the city.
Well, let's bring in freelance journalist Jotam Confino, and regular on the programme this morning, to talk to us. Look, I don't really think it matters what religion you have, where you live in the world. Seeing a lot of the images that were coming out of Rafah yesterday were incredibly hard to watch. Children being crushed under buildings. You know, these are people who've already, in many cases, been moved from Khan Yunis and before that Gaza City, and now being asked from this tented encampment to move again. It's a human tragedy, whichever way you look at it. I suppose the question is, to you, Jotam, is this an actual proper invasion of Rafah, or is this perhaps a really hard-line negotiating strategy, and is there still perhaps some hope for these ceasefire negotiations?
So it is part of a strategy, and the Israeli government has already admitted that this is part of Israel's way to put pressure on Hamas to finally be flexible in the ceasefire negotiations, because until now they have not been. They still demand a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza and a permanent ceasefire. That's not being flexible. So one of the reasons why they went into the eastern part of Rafah yesterday was to put pressure on Hamas. This is not yet a full-blown invasion. Israel is doing this slowly. They're dividing Rafah into stones, and now they're starting with the eastern neighborhood, which encompasses around 100,000 Palestinian civilians, and they are to be moved eastwards into an area where there are tents and food and shelter. Well, but as we also spoke about yesterday, most areas in Gaza are affected by the war one way or another.
Yeah, and as you say, being moved to places where there are resources, but frankly, we're told by a number of independent and impartial aid organisations on the ground, they're not sufficient for the numbers of people that have been asked to move. For example, one toilet being queued for more than 24 hours for women and children who've got complex and multiple injuries themselves. There's widespread condemnation, even from Israel's allies. How long do you think Israel can withstand this kind of pressure? Because this is, I suppose, one of the most controversial moves since the terrible atrocities carried out by Hamas on October the 7th.
I think it really depends on how Israel will conduct itself inside Rafah, because the evacuation of these people is crucial to lower the number of civilians being killed. But like you said, the places that they're going to there aren't sufficient humanitarian aid there. But how Israel conducts itself in Rafah will be crucial. So if Israel makes a lot of mistakes and start killing more aid workers, if a lot of civilians are being killed, then Israel will face enormous pressure. And eventually, the United States might actually force Israel to stop the ground invasion. I think we have to really, really see more catastrophe unfold before the United States makes that decision, because no matter how much Israel's allies warn against this invasion, they all agree that Hamas needs to be removed from Gaza. The UK also agrees to that. So if that's the case, then Rafah is a place Israel has to go in. It's very simple. And it's, of course, easy to condemn Israel for going in there. But what's the solution? If you want to remove Hamas from Gaza, what is the solution? I'm yet to hear anyone come up with any sort of rational solution, a plan B, as to how you would remove Hamas from Gaza if you don't go into Rafah.
Yes, but Jotam, some people would argue or ask even how many innocent Palestinian lives, children especially and women, are worth ridding Hamas?
For Israel, I don't think that there's a number, the same way as the United States didn't have a number when 9/11 happened. They occupied two countries for 2 decades. Hundreds of thousands of people, civilians, were killed. They weren't asked to put a number on this. So for Israel, there's two things at stake. Number one, 133 hostages held inside Gaza. As long as they're in there, you can count on Israel continuing to do everything they can and will to get them out, as any other country would. And number two, as long as Hamas is still militarily present inside Gaza, they will continue this war, because they will not allow Israel to go back to October the 6th, where Hamas constitutes a major threat to Israeli civilians living along the Gaza border.
I mean, it's such a nebulous term, though, isn't it, to say getting to annihilate or get rid of Hamas, because it's like, at what point can you definitively say that Hamas has gone? And what does that mean, that you could actually arguably destroy the entirety of Gaza in order to annihilate Hamas? I mean, it's just, I do think there's a problem there for Netanyahu, and he has to obviously appease this hard line of his government, otherwise his government might collapse. But there are, I suppose, as you're alluding to, questions about the innocent loss of life in all of this.
No, absolutely. But this is the trap that Israel was lured into from day one. Yeah. Hamas knew that this was going to be a nightmare for the civilians in Gaza, and that would be a nightmare for Israel, because it would be condemned from left to right. So of course, it's hard to say how far should Israel go, because, as you mentioned, Hamas is not only a military, it's an ideology, and you cannot defeat an ideology. So Israel will have to see how far it's willing to go in Gaza until it needs to stop this war.
Yeah.
Quite right.
Okay.
Jotam Confino, thank you very much. Now, I'm hoping that the sun is going to poke its head out this week.
Sort of half hoping, because it's so warm in here. I'm hoping for
I know, yeah.
a blast of cool air. Annie Shuttleworth has all the forecasts for you, all the details.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. It should be a dry day for most of us. There's a bit of a cloudier start across the east coast. That's because some clouds pulled in overnight. That should slowly start to burn back throughout this morning and into the afternoon. There could also be some cloudier skies across western coasts into this afternoon, but I think many inland areas will see some long-lived sunshine. It will feel quite warm in the sunshine. However, notice across northwestern areas of Scotland, we're starting to see some rain approach through this afternoon. That'll mainly be restricted to the Western Isles, perhaps parts of the Highlands, and it will feel a little bit cooler here with a bit of a breeze, but in the sunshine, highs of 21 degrees are expected this afternoon, so a similar feel to yesterday. Through this evening, that rain will continue to persist across the far northwest, turning heavy at times, but it will remain restricted to the north of Scotland. Elsewhere, it should stay dry overnight, but again, we could see some mist and fog starting to develop. Some drizzly rain is also possible over parts of the Pennines and southern Scotland. Should be another fairly mild night, despite any clearer skies. So a bright start for many areas of the UK on Thursday, perhaps some mist and fog that will be fairly quick to clear, and it's going to be another dry, bright and sunny day on Thursday. However, across the far northwest of Scotland, still skies will remain cloudier. Rain should start to ease though as you head towards the afternoon, with some brightness developing here as well. But in the sunshine, highs of 22 or 23 degrees, so rather warm with high UV levels.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, we've got a little bit of a request for you. We have been nominated again for lots of Trick Awards, but this programme specifically for Best News Programme category. We were so thrilled to win it last year. We would really love your help to do it again this year.
Yes, all you have to do is head to poll-trick.org.uk. All the details are also on gbnews.com. So vote now and please make it count, because every last ballot counts. And I've been saying to Isabel this morning, another rout of award wins would really ruffle the feathers of some very fierce critics. So please go to the website, get your votes in, and yeah, hopefully we can come home with another brace of awards.
Yeah, and you'll have seen it's not just this programme up for nominations, also Eamonn Holmes, Nigel Farage and Camilla Tominey, so you can vote for them whilst you're there as well.
Right, time for the latest Great British Giveaway. Your chance to win the biggest cash prize of the year so far, a whopping £20,000. Imagine what you could do. What would you do? 20 grand?
Probably be sensible and save it. What would you do?
I love cruises. I know I'm quite young, but
I was going to say, but young, old before your time.
I'll probably go on a world cruise or something.
World cruise, all right, OK. Well, let us know what you would do with this money if you're lucky enough to win it, but here are all the details of how it could be yours.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox, and I won the Great British Giveaway. I'd say, why not? It's what is it? The price of a text and £2 to enter. And if I can win it, anybody can win it. And they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Lots more coming your way, including taking a look at an innovative new app to support children's mental health. We know how important that is. All the details after this.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News, with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
"7:31, you're with Ben and Isabel on Breakfast. Now, we've been talking a lot this morning about online safety for children, and today also marks Mental Health Week.
So, to market, a new first-of-its-kind app to help support the mental health of 13 to 24-year-olds with guidance is being launched today.
Founder of the app, Hidden Strength, Lindsay Lunny, joins us now. Good morning, Lindsay. Great idea, something that I think even, lots of adults could benefit from. Tell us a bit more about the app.
So the app has been designed to allow children to be able to access free mental health support. It's been 5 years in the making. I have a wonderful tech team sat behind it. And we have developed this product in order to allow children to access the support in the comfort and the familiarity of their own home.
What sort of support have you identified that youngsters are needing? What are the problems that they're crying out for help with?
PAMs are fantastic, but unfortunately, as we know, they have huge waiting lists. What we've identified is that children, if you give them the early support in kind of their low-level concerns or kind of stresses and teach them the ability to deal with these situations, you can prevent thousands of children getting into crisis, and which point can then obviously help really reduce that burden on the waiting list system.
Is that not what parents should be doing, though? Talking to their children, asking how they're feeling, asking how their day was. Do you fear that maybe parents are too tied up in their own hectic lives to be doing that these days?
Asking for a friend.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It's the parents do an amazing job. I have 2 children, and the digital world nowadays, how they communicate is via text. It's much easier for them to reach out and ask for help via text. Chat-based therapy just seems to be the way forward for them. I don't think it's necessarily down to the parents, not having the time or the ability. I think it's just more around, the amount of support that's out there and getting it to them in a way that they understand.
Yeah. Obviously, your app is for sort of 13 to 24-year-olds, and you've identified that a lot of those early teens do need the support that you're offering. But what do you make of these increasing calls, and I think it's being debated in Parliament next week, to ban smartphones for under 16s? This is something that's really caught my eye, because there's increasing evidence that youngsters just aren't able to regulate and manage the content that they're seeing online. And would it just be better if actually you were able to provide that service for 16 plus, and actually we said to kids, you know what, have the old school brick that means you can call your parents, let them know where you are, but you don't have this, I don't know how to, Pandora's box of harm. It's like handing your child a loaded weapon, ultimately.
I agree with you. The challenge is, by removing something in schools, it's not going to stop it in the evenings. All you're going to do is just allow it to continue and may even become worse in the evenings. I do think there needs to be more regulation around the way that children access the kind of social media platforms. I know today in the papers they've been talking around age verification. We fully support that at Hidden Strength. It was our top priority, security, right from day one, which is why we integrated an age verification system right at the beginning of the development of the app. But it's about trying to regulate it in a more sensible way. I think by removing it in schools, it doesn't necessarily remove the problem.
What do you think about the idea that children these days are under more mental stress and pressure than ever before? Are we giving them a free pass, do you think? I mean, especially young teenagers, people like to call the Gen Zers, victims. But in actual fact, are they, the cost of living, that people can't buy houses, I'm talking about young people now, are we giving them a hard time, or are they justified in their complaints about feeling really, under pressure?
I think they're justified. We've created a world with social media, which, by the way, I'm not here to bash social media. It's a fantastic platform for many people, but you're adding pressure to their daily life. On top of that, you've got, as you said, the cost of living crisis. You've also got things like school pressure, exam pressure. You have career pressure, and then if you add into the world of social media and looks and the constant need to feel included, it's overwhelming. The teenagers are completely overwhelmed.
Well, good luck with trying to change that and provide some support for youngsters. Lindsay Lunny, founder of Hidden Strength, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right, coming up, Norman and Renee will be back to look at the top stories of the day in Making the News. This is Breakfast on GB News with Ben and Isabel. Stay with us.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the Glasgow subway, there's no service on the outer circle after a train broke down. There's widespread disruption to train services in parts of England today because of industrial action affecting the Vanty West Coast, Chiltern, Cross Country, East Midlands, Great Western, London North Western and West Midlands Railway. No service on most routes, a limited service on a number of others. M40 in Warwickshire's closed northbound from junction 12 at Gaydon to 14 at Leamington after an accident, with delays towards the closure and as you divert. In Essex, the A121 is blocked by an accident between Epping Forest and Waltham Abbey, causing queues, and people arriving into UK airports this morning experienced delays at border control after technical problems last night. Outbound passengers, though, shouldn't be affected. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christys. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's 7:40 and we're about to go through what's making the news this morning in the company of Norman Baker and Dr Renee Hundekamp. Welcome to both of you. Let's start, Norman, with this story in the front of the Express, which is myth-busting about the benefits of migration, net migration. Are we being sold a lie?
I think what we're being sold by the Daily Express is an opinion column on the front page masquerading as news. Because what people have to understand, and I used to see every paper as a minister, and the same story was presented in so many different ways, that you cannot assume that what's on the front of a newspaper these days is actually the news rather than the editor's opinion. This is 3 pages of people saying that migration has not been boosting the economy. There is no counter-argument whatsoever in this paper from anybody else, no quote on the other side at all. The reality is, of course, that what happened was that if we end up with no migrants, I'm not in favour of what's happening at the moment, by the way, in terms of the migration numbers, but you know, the health service would collapse without people coming from abroad to service it.
But Norman,
so would the care sector.
Sorry to interrupt. You're saying that's just an opinion piece. However,
yeah, it is.
Latest ONS GDP figures, GDP per capita contracted by 0.7%, and that's despite a city the size of Birmingham coming here every 2 years.
Yes, but 1 in 5 Brits are economically inactive as well.
Yes, that's true. But you can also listen to the Office of Budget Responsibility tell you that we've lost 4% of GDP as a consequence of Brexit. And that's one of the reasons why...
But that's a slightly separate issue. GDP per capita is the truest way to measure people's quality of lives. I mean, you've got hundreds of thousands of people coming here legally, yet GDP per capita is going down. That, in statistics forms, blows apart the myth that migrants are good for the economy. Renee.
No, I don't think it does, because I think you've got to bear in mind as well that the opportunity for Britain to export and to make money from its own production has been lessened as a consequence of the trade rules brought in from Brexit.
No, I'm not going to let you go there, Norman, on this one, I'm afraid. So we've been actually driving down our production of things for the last 4 decades, not just because of Brexit in the last 6 years. 3.7 million net is the figure that came into the UK since 2010. That is bigger than Wales as a population. People are not silly. They can see that the previous governments, it really started with Blair, decided, and actually Thatcher had a responsibility too, decided to actually supplement business by bringing in people so that wages went down and stayed low. People that work in the trades will tell you that they can no longer make the same money in their trade that they went to college for and trained for, bricklaying, plastering, that they made 15 years ago, because there is now always someone else from another country who will do the job cheaper. We have driven people into poverty by importing cheap workers.
Except the law has been changed, hasn't it? There's now a minimum wage requirement, £37,000, which means a lot of people aren't being able to come in and fill those roles. When we talk about net migration, you were talking about how the NHS would collapse. I think it's around, and I might have this exact figure about wrong, but it's approximately around this number. Around 30,000 come into the NHS, around 30,000 come in to the care sector, and it's 600,000+ who are coming in to prop up our universities. And I think that's the responsibility of Tony Blair, who overextended universities.
Yes, you did.
And we're actually having to take in these huge numbers of migrants in order to keep these institutions open, squeezing out British students from them.
Yes.
And actually, all the attention goes all the time to the people crossing illegally, where there should be safe and legal routes, should there not, for those people who are genuine refugees. And instead, we're talking and focusing on, and should be talking about these universities.
One of the things which is perfectly true is that the number of people coming in legally dwarfs the people coming in on small boats. I mean, the small boats is a side issue compared to numbers coming in legally, but we don't have the same concentration on that. The other factor to bear in mind is that we've got an ageing population here, a natural ageing population, and actually one of the reasons why people come in, or Blair wanted them in the first place, was to provide people who would actually pay taxes to pay for pensions, because if we didn't have any coming in at all, then the population, as we're now seeing in China, as a matter of fact, the population imbalance would cause a problem.
But we didn't build the infrastructure, we didn't build the houses, we didn't train the doctors, we didn't train the nurses. You know, train people here. Yes, you're right about care services, Isabel, but actually, if we paid these people who do the most important job in society, caring for our vulnerable, if we paid them a decent wage, then the people who are economically active might want to get off their backsides and do those jobs. We need to pay people enough money that it actually is worthwhile working.
And instead, we're paying as taxpayers for medical students to be trained to get the best education in the world, and then we export them to other countries and other health services, and then we have to pay to bring in doctors from overseas.
Lock them in.
There's so many questions.
Let's lock them in. Let's say to doctors and nurses, you've got to work in the NHS for 10 years before you can leave.
Just like the army. Or we could sort out quite a lot of those problems then.
Well, we got to an agreement in there.
Yeah, there we go.
Right, should we move on? Should we head to the pub?
Yeah, let's do that. Do you know what we're going to do? We're going to go to the pub after the break. How about that?
I need a nice... all right,
a cool pint.
A cider.
A cider. All right, see you in a moment.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel. Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Today is a good day for the King, a good day for Britain. I'm sure you'll be hoping that those Not My King morons decide to give it a rest for a little while, because he is still dealing with an illness, isn't he?
He's still dealing with an illness, and he appears to be dealing extremely well. I think he comes from the fact that he's extremely strong and fit. I think I understand that will help his treatment enormously. And I think, as your professor was saying, it's the fatigue that can be a brutal thing when you're trying to lead a normal life with cancer. But I think that it's going to really help him psychologically to get out there, and people are going to be giving him enormous support. I mean, I know, as you say, there's an anti-monarchy brigade, but there's been an anti-monarchy brigade since there's been a monarchy. So that is not such a big deal. It has always been there. I feel that Charles is going to get a lot of support from the sort of joyousness of people seeing him and, you know, wishing him well. And I think that that's going to be immensely important to him. It's a very busy time, but I think a boost for William and Kate. William's out and about. We don't know about Kate, but I feel that the King will definitely... It's a very busy time coming up with the anniversary of D-Day in Normandy, which I know he will be desperate to be a part of. Then there's the big royal season, the Trooping the Colour, the Garter ceremony, Royal Ascot, and then he is hosting the Emperor and Empress of Japan at the end of June. So it's a absolutely packed month for someone that is presumably going to get very tired.
Yes, indeed. I mean, if he gets through all of that, I think that will be absolutely massive, won't it?
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here. This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back, 7:48. Should we get back to our news review with Dr. Norman Baker?
Dr. Norman, thank you very much.
Doctor, I've had that side already.
Was that a PhD or was that a medical qualification?
I'll stick for Right Honourable, that's all right.
Norman Baker and Dr. Renee Honderkamp. I've had that side already during the break, as you can tell. We were going to the pub, weren't we? The front page of the Mirror. So pubs will be allowed to stay open until 1 a.m. on match days if England or Scotland reach the semi-finals.
Oh, well, there you go. There's the caveat.
Yeah. Good idea, Renee.
Do you know what? Of course, it's a good idea. Look, our hospitality sector is, on the floor. COVID nearly killed it. Those who have managed to survive need all the help they can get. Any big football tournament is a massive boost to the pub industry, the restaurant industry. Of course, we should do it. And for those arguing, people will get drunk or they will be encouraged to drink alcohol, we have to give back to people some personal responsibility. They need to be able to decide how much they're going to drink and when they're going to drink it.
It's not quite as simple as that, if I may say so. And I speak, having seen this at close hand, and actually wrestled with this issue when I was a minister, because I was responsible for alcohol policy at the Home Office, and Theresa May was the Home Secretary at the time. And there was clear evidence, and Theresa May was of the same view, that that if you give a blanket permission for pubs to open very late on these occasions, and the football team loses, there is a significant uptick in the amount of domestic violence inflicted on women as a consequence. And therefore, the sensible thing to do is to allow local magistrates, as they do at the moment, to take a view on which particular pub should open late according to applications to come in, rather than this blanket permission, because that will happen. And you see the consequences in what women have to suffer if football teams lose. That's the reality of it.
Sobering thought there. Norman, can we talk about Mandelson? He's obviously the famous Labour spin doctor, and this comes just after Rachel Reeves spent the day talking about workers' rights and what that will mean under a Labour government. But he's actually... Well, he's been trying to stifle mass lawsuits, according to this report.
He's been representing big business across the world, being financed by the US Chamber of Commerce, and no doubt making a lot of money as a consequence. And his company, his firm, Global Counsel, is pushing the idea that those who want to take mass lawsuits for very good reasons, for example, against the Post Office or the Equal Pay Action against Sainsbury, the motorists who brought claims against VW, remember all those? They would be far more difficult. The government at the moment is pushing through legislation to make sure people can do that. All credit to the government for doing that, and he's trying to stop it. Well, the Prince of Darkness, as he was, really, we were better off without him in British politics. I should say, just for the record, of course, that back in the day, it was my parliamentary question which forced him to resign over the Hinduja passport affair.
What was your question?
Whether or not he'd lobbied on behalf of the Hinduja brothers to get citizenship in return for donations for the Millennium Dome.
Oh, so you continue your vendetta by highlighting that today.
I think British policy would be a lot better off without Peter Mandelson.
It would, but let's not forget that if we get Keir Starmer, which is looking more likely every day, we will get Blair and Mandelson in the background pulling the strings of Keir Starmer because they already are advising him. And people shouldn't forget that. If they hated the Blair government, they're going to get it again.
And also, we may, talking about mass lawsuits, we may get one with the contaminated blood scandal, which concludes, I think it's next week.
Yeah, yes. We should absolutely get one. These people, these poor people that got the contaminated blood, when people knew, people in power, doctors who are using it knew for 3 years, it looks like, that it could be given these people these diseases, Hep C, HIV. It's a scandal.
Yeah, the Telegraph had a great story over the weekend about how doctors at certain hospitals here were getting commission from US pharma companies for choosing US blood instead of the much cleaner UK blood.
Oh, my goodness. This is a really shocking story, Norman. It's in our bulletin this morning. It's got lots of people getting in touch on your say as well this morning. A woman called the Immolator shared monkey torture videos to global online chat groups. I mean, some people are just unwell, aren't they?
I thought it was right to raise this as part of the paper review this morning because it's such a serious issue. I mean, I personally find it very emotional and sickening, actually, what this woman and her people have done. Holly Legrisley, or Legrisley, in fact, I think I should call her. And she ran a poll asking members what kind of torture should be inflicted upon an infant monkey. I mean, and they talked about issues like setting them on fire, injuring them with tools, putting one in a blender. I mean, what is wrong with these people?
No, exactly.
It's absolutely appalling.
They're just
I
demonic.
hope very much she'll have a serious prison sentence out of this.
Well, I hope so too. And I think people like this are a danger to society, because if they can do that to a baby monkey, they can do it to anyone. We know that in psychiatry, children that can harm animals actually have a very bleak outlook in terms of their future, their socialisation and how they perform in society. What worries me about this is this could be just the tip of an iceberg.
Yeah.
And again, we come back to being online and social media. Do we want our children seeing this? If our children see this, does it change how they behave towards animals, what they do to small children? It's a really deep and dark story, and we need to know if it's the tip of a bigger iceberg.
Yeah, we do.
We also know the link between adults who harm animals and those who go on to commit violent crime against other humans. Quite often, people who've hurt animals go on to murder and assault. So a very, very serious crime committed by Le Grizzly, as you dubbed her there, Norman. How are we doing for time? I think we're pretty much out of time for this hour, so we're going to say goodbye to the Doctor and the Right Honourable, and we will see you again just after 8:30. Thank you both. For now, though, let's get a check on the forecast. It's hot in here. What's it going to be like where you are? Here's Annie Shuttleworth.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. It should be a dry day for most of us. There's a bit of a cloudier start across the east coast. That's because some clouds pulled in overnight. That should slowly start to burn back throughout this morning and into the afternoon. There could also be some cloudier skies across western coasts into this afternoon, but I think many inland areas will see some long-lived sunshine. It will feel quite warm in the sunshine. However, notice across northwestern areas of Scotland, we're starting to see some rain approach through this afternoon. That'll mainly be restricted to the Western Isles, perhaps parts of the Highlands, and it will feel a little bit cooler here with a bit of a breeze, but in the sunshine, highs of 21 degrees are expected this afternoon, so a similar feel to yesterday. Through this evening, that rain will continue to persist across the far northwest, turning heavy at times, but it will remain restricted to the north of Scotland. Elsewhere, it should stay dry overnight, but again, we could see some mist and fog starting to develop. Some drizzly rain is also possible over parts of the Pennines and southern Scotland. Should be another fairly mild night, despite any clearer skies. So a bright start for many areas of the UK on Thursday, perhaps some mist and fog that will be fairly quick to clear, and it's going to be another dry, bright and sunny day on Thursday. However, across the far northwest of Scotland, still skies will remain cloudier. Rain should start to ease, though, as you head towards the afternoon, with some brightness developing here as well. But in the sunshine, highs of 22 or 23 degrees, so rather warm with high UV levels.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the Glasgow subway, there's no service on the outer circle after a train broke down. There's disruption to a number of train services in England today because of industrial action. No service on most Avanti West Coast, Chiltern Rail, Cross Country, East Midlands, Great Western, and the North Western and West Midlands rail routes. On the roads in the West Midlands, the A34 is closed southbound on the High Street in Aston for an investigation. The M40 in Warwickshire is closed northbound from junction 12 at Gaydon to 14 at Leamington after an accident causing queues. In Essex, the A121 is blocked each way by an accident between Epping Forest and Waltham Abbey, causing delays. And people arriving into UK airports this morning may experience delays at border control after a technical problem last night. Outbound passengers, though, shouldn't be affected. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox and I won the Great British Giveaway. I'd say why not? It's what is it? The price of a text and £2 to enter. And if I can win it, anybody can win it. And they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Di Piero bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good morning. It is 8 o'clock on the dot. This is Wednesday, the 8th of May, and you're watching Breakfast with Isabel Webster and Ben Leo.
Very good morning to you. Here's what's leading the news headlines this morning. Amid a rise in young people being bullied online, Ofcom is set to get tough, introducing new age restrictions to use social media.
Prince Harry's back in the UK to celebrate 10 years of his Invictus Games charity today, but why has he been snubbed by his father, the King?
And the UK warns Israel over the risk of war crimes in Rafah, as UNICEF says 600,000 children face catastrophe in the region.
And chaos at our airports as a nationwide e-gate glitch left tens of thousands stranded in terminals. We want to hear from you this morning if you were affected. Let us know, gbnews.com/your say.
Plus, as more details of the Ministry of Defence hack are revealed, should we be getting tougher on China? We're going to be debating that very, very shortly.
And in the sport this morning, Borussia Dortmund beat Paris Saint-Germain last night to reach the final of the Champions League. Who will they play? Will it be Real Madrid or will it be an all-German final of Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich, of Harry Kane's Bayern Munich, of course. Nottingham Forest have lost their appeal to keep their points deduction, and the Olympic flame arrives in France today.
Good morning. Another day of sunny and bright weather for many of us, but will that sunshine last until tomorrow? You can find out all the details with me a little later on.
Good morning, welcome to the programme. Our top story this morning on the front of lots of the papers this morning. The Times going with the headline, Britain leads charge to keep the young safe online. And this follows on from the regulator Ofcom unveiling new age restrictions for online social media use in a bid to try and keep youngsters safer online.
So social media firms will soon be required to introduce robust checks, including the use of photo ID, such as passports, to identify children before they use their apps and websites.
And it comes today as internet safety charity Internet Matters has revealed 1 in 7 teens have experienced online nude sharing abuse.
Crazy. And that's young kids as well, 13, 14-year-olds, not just, older teens. GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley joins us now. Good morning, Olivia. How's this been received amongst voters, do you think? Is it a much welcomed idea? You'd think so?
Well, it's been warmly welcomed by campaigners. It is a pretty impressive set of measures that Ofcom is bringing in. The government, when it introduced the online safety bill, said that it wanted Britain to be the safest place in the world to be a child online. And with these new measures, Ofcom is trying to live up to that. The most dramatic change will be social media companies will have to tame those aggressive algorithms which encourage children to keep looking at whatever content they've been looking at, which, as we know from the awful case of Molly Russell, a depressed 14-year-old, she was targeted with depressive material over and over again, essentially bombarded with it because she once looked at it. And her father, Ian Russell, blames that on her suicide. So this will be the biggest change. These companies won't be allowed to use these aggressive algorithms. And also, there'll be really stringent age safety checks. At the moment, will come as no surprise to anyone, when children sign up to social media, they just lie about their age. They are asked to put in their date of birth, but a third of them are putting in adult dates of birth. With these new measures, children will have to show photo ID or else have an actual facial ID check. Now, on the whole, the online safety bill was pretty warmly welcomed by voters. Polling showed that people liked it. But there is this sort of lingering scepticism. Laws that have been brought like this around the world, in the US and Australia, have ended up stalling because it's really difficult for legislation to keep up with how quickly these social media companies are moving. The problem of aggressive algorithms is only relatively new. It began with the dawning of the TikTok era, and other social media companies copied. This is a new problem, and the government seems to be fixing this problem. But sometimes with legislation like this, it feels a bit like playing whack-a-mole. You're always trying to catch up with this very, very fast-moving technology. So as far as I'm reading it, I mean, campaigners are happy, but they are a little bit sceptical. Until it comes in, will it be able to keep up with the pace of change? And that'll be the measure by which it's judged.
OK, Olivia, thanks very much.
Fines of 10% of global revenue
or
for social media companies.
£18,000 or an outright ban, and that sounds a lot. The question is whether or not, Ofcom will be able to enforce it, whether or not that is even, it's sort of a negligible amount, isn't it, to a lot of these big tech companies?
Well, yeah.
And, they'll be able to just build that in.
Renee, previously in the last hour, was saying that these companies are just going to take the hit on the chin because it's going to be worth it in the long run.
Something has to be done. I mean, the number of suicides in youngsters and all the lifelong concerns around having those nude pictures shared in an abusive fashion, what kind of impact that has on your life as you're just starting out, it's got to be absolutely devastating.
Yeah, it's a big worry for parents. Right, should we move on? Some royals. It's been confirmed that Prince Harry, he's in town. He will not meet the King tonight whilst he's in London today. He landed in the capital yesterday ahead of an Invictus Games event at St Paul's Cathedral.
Yes, however, a spokesperson for the Duke of Sussex has told GB News it is unfortunately not possible due to His Majesty the King's full schedule, adding that the Prince is understanding of his father's commitments and hopes to see him soon. Well, let's bring in former butler to King Charles III, Grant Harold, who joins us this morning. Good to see you. Gosh, I mean, this feels like something's changed because there were, hints and indications that there might be another meeting, much like there was just for half an hour last time Harry was in town. Is your reading of this that there's something going on behind the scenes and we don't know the full picture, or do you think it can be a genuine schedule clash?
Good morning to you both. I'm not 100% sure. I think what's interesting is the King's obviously just returned back to his duties as such, or lighter duties. And it is possible that his diary will be full because obviously he's only undertaking so many things at a time. But I think most of us might be thinking, with his son being in the country, you'd want to make the opportunity to possibly see him. And it could be as simple as that the diary is not permitting. And also Prince Harry's diary might not be allowing, it might just be clashing. But then, as you say, there's the question underneath the surface, is there still this ongoing fallout? Because I also noted that Prince William is also not going to see his brother, and neither of them are going to be attending the service at St Paul's. Again, that could be because of their personal commitments and their diaries. That's completely possible. But I think when it comes to family, normally families, when they're in a country, do try to see each other. So it does seem slightly strange, but it's not completely impossible that it is because of the workloads.
Grant, you know the King quite well. You're his former butler, of course. How do you think he'll be dealing with the fact that he is pretty much estranged from his son? Emotionally, what's he going to be going through, do you think?
I have absolutely no doubt that, as far as that's concerned, that he'll be devastated by the fact that that relationship is not how it used to be. When I was there, the three of them were very, 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 well, I should say the four of them, including the Duchess of Cornwall, as she was, were very, very close. And to see and to follow what's happened over the last couple of years is even for myself, it's upsetting because they were very close, and I've no doubt that the King, that is something that will be on his mind on probably a daily basis.
And given how much we know the King adores his wife and the comments that Harry made about her in his book Spare, do you think that that will be a factor in these strained relations?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can't put something like that in a book and make those kind of comments and expect everything to kind of be fine. I mean, obviously it's hurtful, and it's interesting because, again, for me it's very confusing because I always thought that they all got on and never kind of saw. It doesn't mean to say that those thoughts and feelings went there. It's completely possible, but it's just I never personally ever witnessed any of that, and I think that's what's very sad is it's come to this because, see, they all got on really well, and it's sad that now this is a family that's no longer united as it once was.
What did you personally witness? Just give us a sense of that closeness that you saw whilst you were in the household, up close and personal.
Yeah, just that they all got on, and when I say they got on, like any other family, this is what I think sometimes people forget is, yes, they're all family, but behind closed doors, they are like any other family. They get together, they have meals together, they have laughs together, they have fun together. And I witnessed all that, and I witnessed the fun times and the laughter. Do you know what I mean? The laughter between, for example, Queen Camilla and William and Harry, and the kind of jokes and the fun side. And so that's what I mean. I didn't see anything different. And I say it doesn't mean to say that Harry obviously had personal feelings, and maybe are quite right, he didn't share those at the time. But it's just very sad that it has come to this because, as I said, from my point of view, I thought they were all very close.
What about Prince William, Grant? He's away on duties, but his wife, the Princess of Wales, Catherine, she's recovering from cancer. He's not seeing either of those two either, is he?
No, and that's slightly confusing because I can understand with Prince William being away, maybe carrying out other duties, it's possible that that's not going to work. But Harry was very, 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 very close to Catherine. Absolutely. I mean, they were completely the best of friends. And with what's going on with Catherine just now, I would have assumed he would want to see her. It is possible that because of the treatment and that kind of thing, maybe being cautious, not having too many visitors, that kind of thing, that is completely possible. But again, it just doesn't add up. That's the thing. None of it really adds up. And as we know, the palace is obviously not really commenting about what Harry's doing. Obviously, there's been comments from the spokespeople, but there's no kind of clear indication as to how this relationship is progressing at all. And it is sad to see that it has broken down and it's become it's got to the point where it is just now. And I keep hoping, as I've said before, that this relationship will one day be fixed. But as time goes on, I'm beginning to wonder if it's a relationship that's beyond repair.
I think we all share those hopes and concerns. Grant, Harold, always lovely to have you on the programme. Thanks very much. I was talking about witnessing that banter between not only the brothers and the now Queen Camilla, but also Princess Catherine as well. And we all saw it, didn't we, in a lot of the interviews, the banter. Well, not the Fab Four so much. I don't really associate Meghan in that kind of banter bubble, but you could just remember the ribbing between the brothers about who was better, who was worse, who was going to perform for the cameras and the sporting prowess. It was part of what we loved about them, as there was that sort of closeness that you could see that they could tease each other publicly and get away with it.
There was that Fab Four vibe in the very early days. They were going to do all their charity work together. They were under one household, and then very quickly they split. The households
then, of course, Kate hesitated to share her lip gloss, and that was it with Meghan.
If reports are to be
believed.
If
reports are to be believed. The time is 8:11. We're going to take a look at the other stories making the headlines this morning.
Foreign Secretary Lord Cameron has warned the UK is at risk of committing war crimes. Israel, rather, is at risk of committing war crimes in Rafah if they continue their latest offensive without a credible plan to protect civilians. Global charity UNICEF, they've also warned the ground incursion into Rafah will pose a, quote, catastrophic risk to 600,000 children currently taking shelter in the city. Earlier, we spoke to Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth about Labour's reaction to what's going on.
There is a catastrophe facing us, and the international community need to work to bring about that immediate ceasefire and bring an end to this horrendous conflict.
The porn star, Stormy Daniels, has taken to the stand in Donald Trump's hush money trial, describing her alleged sexual encounter with the former president at a golf tournament in 2006. It is just one of 4 criminal cases that Donald Trump is facing. Earlier, we spoke with the American criminal defense attorney, Joseph Tully.
The prosecution, it's a win because they get to muddy him up in front of a jury. But really, in terms of can the prosecution meet the elements of the crime, this had very little legal significance.
And to Worcester, where a woman has admitted to being part of a global monkey torture network. Holly Legresley posted more than 130 videos and 20 photos of the animals being tortured to online chat groups. The 37-year-old pleaded guilty to separate charges of publishing obscene articles and intentionally encouraging animal cruelty.
A nationwide issue with Border Force e-gates has caused significant disruption at airports overnight. Heathrow, Gatwick and Manchester were all affected by the outage as tens of thousands of people were left stranded in terminals. A spokesperson for the Home Office has revealed the network issue occurred just before 8 o'clock last night. The e-gates came back online around midnight. At the moment, there is no indication it was as a result of a cyber attack.
I keep saying I'm keeping a keen eye on the weather because I've said many times on this channel in recent weeks I have become so infuriated with grey skies and rain. But this week, fingers crossed,
summer is a-coming.
Looks like we're turning a corner. Annie Shuttleworth has more details.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. It should be a dry day for most of us. There's a bit of a cloudier start across the east coast. That's because some clouds pulled in overnight. That should slowly start to burn back throughout this morning and into the afternoon. There could also be some cloudier skies across western coasts into this afternoon, but I think many inland areas will see some long-lived sunshine. It will feel quite warm in the sunshine. However, notice across northwestern areas of Scotland, we're starting to see some rain approach through this afternoon. That'll mainly be restricted to the Western Isles, perhaps parts of the Highlands, and it will feel a little bit cooler here with a bit of a breeze, but in the sunshine, highs of 21 degrees are expected this afternoon, so a similar feel to yesterday. Through this evening, that rain will continue to persist across the far northwest, turning heavy at times, but it will remain restricted to the north of Scotland. Elsewhere, it should stay dry overnight, but again, we could see some mist and fog starting to develop. Some drizzly rain is also possible over parts of the Pennines and southern Scotland. Should be another fairly mild night, despite any clearer skies. So a bright start for many areas of the UK on Thursday, perhaps some mist and fog that will be fairly quick to clear, and it's going to be another dry, bright and sunny day on Thursday. However, across the far northwest of Scotland, still skies will remain cloudier. Rain should start to ease though as you head towards the afternoon, with some brightness developing here as well. But in the sunshine, highs of 22 or 23 degrees, so rather warm with high UV levels.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, we've been nominated for a Trick Award. We won last year and we're up for Best News Programme again this year. And we would really love some help with taking the trophy home again.
Yes, but we need your assistance. All you have to do to vote is head to poll-trick.org.uk. All the details are also on gbnews.com. So please, please, please vote now to make it count. And the QR code is on the screen. If you don't know how to use those QR codes, by the way, because not many people do actually, get your mobile phone, open the camera, and as if you're going to be taking a picture of your TV screen. When you do that, a small link button will appear. So
yellow
just click
one
the link. Yeah.
On my phone. Is it yellow on yours?
Yeah,
oh,
yellow on our
Not just me. OK, perfect. Thank you so much. If you do take the time to do that, we do really appreciate it.
OK, summer is just around the corner, you'd hope, and we want to make it sizzle for you with an incredible £20,000 in cash up for grabs in the latest Great British Giveaway.
Here's how you can make the prize yours.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox, and I won the Great British Giveaway. I'd say, why not? What is it? The price of a text and £2 to enter. And if I can win it, anybody can win it. And they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Stay with us. Coming up, we're going to be talking about China and these latest cyber attacks suspected to have come from there. Is it time that we sanction China further or take a tougher line? We'll be discussing that next.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Rishi Sunak has come out fighting and declared war on what he's called the UK's sick note culture. The country's welfare state bill costs the average taxpayer now £2,000 every single year for every British taxpayer. Astonishing numbers, Catherine, simply mind-bending. 69 billion quid every year now goes on benefits. I paid my tax bill last month. Where did your tax go? I clicked on it. Long-term sickness and benefits is now second only to the NHS on what we spend our tax pound on. This is simply unsustainable.
That's exactly what the Prime Minister said. 69 billion a year on long-term sick and disability benefits, projected to rise to 90 billion by the end of the next Parliament if nothing has done. As he said, it is totally, totally unsustainable. And the message from Rishi Sunak really is, tough love. You're going to take your medicine. It's going to be good for you. You may not like it. Let's have a look at what he had to say earlier.
Everyone with the potential should be supported. And not just to earn, but to contribute and belong. And we must never tolerate barriers that hold people back from making their contribution and from sharing in that sense of self-worth that comes from feeling part of being something bigger than ourselves. And that is why this is a moral mission, and why the value of work is so central to my vision for welfare reform.
Certainly, Rishi Sunak said in the speech, in the period since the pandemic, something has gone wrong. Of course, millions of people had their wages paid by furlough. Now, that was an entirely artificial situation in an exceptional circumstance, but quite a lot of people left the workplace and simply haven't come back.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth,
it's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back, 8:21. You're with Ben and Isabel on GB News Breakfast. Paul Coyte's here with all the sport, and he's here to tell us about Spurs' collapse. He's not really. I'm just GB News. Spurs' collapse of the Premier League season.
Premier League's not over yet, my friend. Yeah. It's not over yet.
I think it probably ended, Paul, when Arsenal thrashed you. Was it 3-2 in the end, wasn't it?
Do you think Arsenal will win the title?
Well, we need you, ironically, to do a job on City.
Do you think that Arsenal will win the title? What do you think?
No, not with you lot at the steering wheel.
OK. Well, what you think so? Should we talk about Paris Saint-Germain and Dortmund?
Yes.
OK, Paris Saint-Germain 0, Dortmund 1. Dortmund, who came 5th in the Bundesliga, have turned over Paris Saint-Germain, and I tell you what, they defended brilliantly. They scored as well. This is over in Paris. So they came through the group of death, they called it, in the Champions League, which had PSG and AC Milan were there, and Newcastle as well. But they've come through that, and now they are in the final of the Champions League. Jadon Sancho, we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
You know, he's playing for Dortmund and playing fantastically. Should we go with the song again? You enjoyed the song, right?
Yes, come
on.
Yeah,
the drinking song.
In a German accent.
Yeah, I don't know whether I'll be able to sing it the same as the Germans, but there they are. There's the fans in Paris with some of the players. They sing a song where it's all about a Dortmund fan that wants to go abroad and has to try and get out of work. Oh, that happens a lot. And he hands in a sick note, and then he says his grandfather's died, and then he takes overtime, and then he gets sacked, and then at the end, they sing "Who Cares?" Borussia Dortmund are playing abroad.
It's all very civil, isn't it? The Germans know how to behave. I was at the Arsenal.
But you know what? The Germans, when it comes to Dortmund, and fantastic fans. I mean, you've never really got too far in the Champions League, so you wouldn't really know that. But the thing is, Dortmund are fantastic fans and very, very friendly.
We made a final in 2006, I'll have you know.
Did you?
And we were, 2-1 against Barcelona. But in Germany, the whole football scene is completely different because tickets cost £20–30.
That's right.
The stadiums are packed with genuine fans, and the atmosphere is just incredible.
It really is. And when you get trouble and you look at Italy and you look at Spain, you look at other countries, Germany are very, very good, but there's a rivalry between them. In fact, every other German team and Bayern Munich. Nobody seems to like Bayern Munich because they're seen...
Because they win the league.
They win everything, and they're very arrogant the way they are, but they're going to be playing Real Madrid, so that's obviously Harry Kane. Who did he used to play for? I can't remember. But anyway, Harry Kane, who will be playing against Jude Bellingham for Real Madrid. So people are trying to build... You see this in the papers, they're trying to build up some sort of tension between...
And isn't it interesting how we've now got Harry Kane playing abroad, Sancho, Jude Bellingham's doing amazingly well at Real Madrid. Is there a case there that, in actual fact, if English players really want to achieve their potential, they need to go abroad?
See, I don't know. I think Harry Kane was an interesting matter of point. And I will be honest. At Spurs, obviously he wants to win something. I can't believe I'm actually talking to you about this, man.
To admit it,
but he's gone over to, and it would be lovely if Bayern Munich, and because the thing is, they got knocked out of the German Cup. They're the Bundesliga. They've come second, and so that's not very good with Bayer Leverkusen winning that. So people are thinking, oh, the irony, the fact he's gone over to Bayern Munich, he'd win everything. They're not going to win anything. It could be the thing that you'd always want to win, and that's the Champions League. So they've got to beat Real Madrid. It's going to be we're going to be opposite sides again. I would love to see Bayern Munich beat Real Madrid. So it's 2-2, and that's at the Bernabeu tonight. So that really is going to be some game.
Great. And what's going on with Nottingham Forest?
Well, they've had that appeal against their points deduction turned down. So this was down to the profit and sustainability rules. They were allowed to lose £61 million. They broke it by £34 million. So they were given a points deduction, which, OK, that's it. They broke the rules. So then they've gone back and said, well, we'd like to appeal against this. But it was a unanimous decision that no, that points deduction stands. So at the bottom of the Premier League, where we've got Sheffield United way at the bottom with 16, Burnley 24, Luton 26, Nottingham Forest 29. So it's going to be two of those
I think they're a really good side, Forest. It's a shame they couldn't take points from City the other day. But why is it always the smaller clubs, Forest, Everton, who are getting penalised in this way, when the likes of Man City, how many alleged crimes have they committed? Financial crimes?
It's true.
168.
But the thing is, it's done on a different thing. This is on profit and sustainability. So the thing is, they can be punished straight away by the Premier League. That's the rules. And yeah, I know how you feel about Man City, and we all look at that and think, there's all these charges, but that's being fought the whole time, so that's another situation altogether, whereas the Premier League are allowed to go straight in and say, right,
a points deduction at this point of the season for City would be much welcomed, let me tell you, Premier League.
Would it really? I thought it might be. There might even be, well, we'll see how things go. Finally, Olympics, 79 days to go to the Olympic Games. Are you looking forward to the Olympics? You like being in the Olympics?
I do. I remember 2012, vivid memories of Mo Farah storming home.
What were you, 6 then? What, do you remember all that?
2012, I was 8, 9, 10 years ago. I was 25.
Right, OK, fine.
I'm 35. I know I look 17, but I'm actually nearly 35.
Oh, go on.
Which plays into my hands.
Yeah, it does. Well, you wait till you get to my age. Everybody thinks you're much younger. So, Olympics, 79 days away, and we'd like to keep up with the Olympic flame, which has been on board the 19th century ship, which is called the Belém. Be careful how you say that. There it is, on board the Belém. It's taken 12 days to go on ship from Greece to France. That's a slow... There's not many knots on that one, is there? It is. Anyway,
That's a proper sailing boat.
There we are, and there it is. There's the Olympic flame.
Is that it?
That's it.
I thought it was some extravagant grand bonfire.
Guys, what is wrong with you all? You all desperately want to see pyrotechnics everywhere this Olympic torch goes. I love that it's this
Men like fire.
This small flame that then turns into this huge, incredible thing from one small flame. I think it's quite beautiful.
Is it meant to be quite symbolic, I guess?
Yeah, that sums up life, really, doesn't it? A little tiny flame. And so anyway, then the longest torch relay in history. Oh, by the way, this is Marseille here. They're going early, but they're going to have huge celebrations in Marseille when it arrives tonight.
Oh, wow.
So, and this is in Marseille. There we are. They're having celebrations before the flame has even arrived. So the torch...
that's a bit more impressive than the...
It is slightly much. You're even saying it yourself. You were saying how much you like the little flame.
That does look great.
There we are. 10 weeks the actual torch relay is going to take. 10,000 people will carry the flames when they do the relay. I don't know whether they do like 2 yards each. Goes across 400 towns and territories. Even goes to all the territories like Guadeloupe and Martinique and New Caledonian and Reunion. So I think they'll probably fly over there. There's not much talk. They can't take the Bel Em over there, or else it'll probably take a year to get there. So then they're going to do it around there.
They should have started a little earlier if they're going to do that.
I think they should have done. They should have started it before they even announced that they were going to get the Olympics. But anyway, all begins today. So the torch relay begins today as it arrives in the port of Marseille.
Great stuff.
Very exciting. Geraldine Farmer-Mills on gbnews.com/yoursay has said, I used to like you, Ben Leo, but then discovered you are an can't even say the word fan, Arsenal fan.
Guna? Did she put Guna? Or did she say
she said can't even say that she can't bring herself to...
Oh, she can't. Oh, my goodness me.
And there was one for you, Paul, as well, saying, Paul seems such a great bloke and a funny guy. Shame he's a Spurs supporter. It was good to see you putting the boot in, Ben. Glad to be of service.
Yeah.
Right, after that...
What's your mum's name?
Thanks very much indeed, Queety, for that. Stay with us. Coming up, friend or foe, this recent spate of cyber attacks. Should we be sanctioning and taking China a little bit more seriously? We promised that earlier. It is up next.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There's disruption to a number of train services in parts of England again today because of industrial action, with no service on a number of routes. On the M62 in Cheshire, the inside lane's closed eastbound after an accident between junctions 10 and 11 from the M6 to Birchwood. There are queues from junction 8 west of Warrington. On the M6 in Cheshire, there's a lane closed southbound after an accident between junctions 18 and 17 from Middlewich and Holmes Chapelturn towards Sandbach, causing queues. The M40 in Warwickshire is closed northbound from junction 12 at Gaydon to 14 at Leamington after an accident with delays as you divert. In Northamptonshire, the A14 is blocked westbound by an accident between junction 1 at Welford and the M1-M6 Catthorpe interchange, causing delays. The M27 in Hampshire, there's a lane closed westbound where cars overturn between junctions 10 and 9 towards Fareham, and people arriving into UK airports this morning might experience delays after a problem last night. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers. I agree. And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Now, the Defence Secretary has told MPs that the government is concerned about the role of China, or they didn't name them specifically in this latest cyber attack. They said that they couldn't rule out state involvement in a hack at the Ministry of Defence, but, as I say, refused to confirm all the reports that we've been talking about over the last 24 hours that it was actually China.
So Beijing, they have strongly denied the reports that they're behind the attack, saying the accusations are, quote, completely fabricated. But we're going to ask the question, nonetheless, should we sanction China? How big of a problem is it in the UK? We're joined now by Defence and Foreign Affairs Editor at the Daily Telegraph, Con Coughlin, who believes we should sanction China, and the Assistant Editor at The Spectator, Cindy Wu, who believes we shouldn't. Good morning to you both. Let's go to you first, Con. I mean, this isn't the first time we've heard about China potentially meddling in British affairs. Of course, in 2022, Barry Gardiner, the Labour MP, Beijing Barry, as he was affectionately nicknamed, he was paid £600,000 by an alleged Chinese spy. So just how deep does the alleged rot go?
Well, there's no doubt there's a lot of Chinese meddling in the UK, and the Chinese are very clever. Unlike the Russians who come here with their Novichok and poison people, the Chinese keep a low profile, but they quietly infiltrate institutions such as universities and research establishments. They buy businesses, and we saw with the whole Huawei scandal a few years ago when they tried to get hold of our 5G network, that the Chinese are very, very smart. Now, of course, it's only an allegation that they're responsible for this MOD hack. But, I think that people like Ian Duncan-Smith are quite right when we say that we need to upgrade our view of China as a threat and not something that we can still do business with. And I'll just say, additionally, that the reason Russia's has improved its military operations in Ukraine is because of the support it's getting from China.
OK, well, Cindy, let's bring you into this debate then. If we were to sanction China appropriately for what we believe, although it's not as yet been confirmed, would that hurt us as much as we were being led to believe by the Prime Minister, who seems very dovish in his response to, I think there's been at least 2 confirmed cyber attacks this year. We've had these 2 espionage charges brought. So, at the moment, I think it was Ian Duncan-Smith who said the sanctions we've been using so far have been like an elephant giving birth to a mouse. Do we need to go further?
What a lovely image, Isabel. I think your word appropriately, sanctioning appropriately, is the main thing here. What is an appropriate sanction that's actually going to deter China? And frankly, when it comes to Chinese Communist Party, the sanctions that typically are used, this targeted Magnitsky sanctions on people and on their property and on their travel, is not going to hurt the Chinese Communist Party because they don't have any links to the West when it comes to the high-level cadres. They already have their passport held by the Communist Party. They are not allowed to hold property abroad. At least the party's cracking down on that really seriously now. So how can it hurt them? And I think that level of sanction, the targeted sanctions, is not actually really going to deter attacks like these. So the question is, what will help? And I think when it comes to cyber espionage, first of all, making sure that we don't have vulnerabilities ourselves, asking questions about why this external contractor was used, where the vulnerabilities lie, whether or not other data for other government departments are also at risk, and just really kind of upping that defense. Because, yes, it's a dangerous world out there. And I agree with Con that China, if incredibly friendly. I mean, if it was America, it might not spy on us. Well,
Gosh,
actually,
I find that
sometimes does spy on
extraordinary,
us.
Cindy, that you think rather than actually taking punitive action, we should just take defensive action. And again, I've got another fantastic quote from, I forget the name, but it was an SNP MP who talked about our sanctions last time as like turning up to a gunfight with a wooden spoon. I mean, it's laughable. We have to find a way that hurts China, even if it hurts ourselves. Is that not the answer? Because I suppose, in a way, China needs us economically as much as we need them. So perhaps that will be the only way to fire a warning shot, because then they will realise that their economy will suffer. And it is in decline, isn't it, Con Coughlin?
Well, it is. But I think Cindy does make a good point. I mean, we have to look at the threat we face from China and prepare to defend ourselves against it. One significant area is cyber. So, we do have now a whole range of institutions we've set up to tackle this kind of threat, and it's very much part of the national security profile. But having said that, I still think just to sort of take it on the chin and not respond to Chinese acts of aggression, which is this is attack on our Ministry of Defence, and with this information in the wrong hands, they can do a lot of damage. So I think taking targeted sanctions would send a message to Beijing. I hear what Cindy says about the impact it might have, but at least let's make a gesture and demonstrate to the Chinese that we know what they're up to, and we do not see them as a friendly state, and we will treat them as such.
The problem is, Cindy, we don't see them as a friendly state, but China, in their response to these allegations, and previously, actually, they've always, I'd argue, patronised the UK by saying, why would we bother spying on the UK? You're so insignificant. We dwarf you in all aspects. Am I fair in that assessment in saying that, the Chinese view us as, just a fly on their tail, perhaps?
That's a really interesting point, and going back to what Isabel was saying earlier about how we can just not do anything at all. I agree. It's not that we can just not do anything at all. But when it comes to the UK's China relation, frankly, the UK is pretty small in terms of China's priorities list. When it comes to China's trading partner, just in terms of pure volume, China trades more with Russia than it trades with the UK. So for the UK to do something, it has to be allied with the rest of the West. It has to be allied with Europe. It has to be allied with America and other Five Eyes nations. So, yes, we might hand wring and say, God, we have to do something. But frankly, the UK doesn't have enough leverage by itself. So that's why when we saw the hacks earlier in the year revealed, it was a Five Eyes united statement. And I think something like that holds a much greater punch than just UK-specific sanctions.
Finally, we've seen Xi Jinping, President of China, in France on a state visit this week. Do you think that this incident and the allegations will have caused any embarrassment, given that he is so close to us, just across the Channel, Con? Or do you think this is water off a duck's back for him?
Well, I fear it is water off a duck's back, but Cindy's quite right. I mean, Britain alone cannot, tackle China. We need to work with our allies, and I think the fact that we should make a song and dance about this right now and embarrass Xi Jinping. I mean, the Chinese want trade. You're quite right. The Chinese economy is being challenged. A lot of Western countries are now thinking twice about their investments, and I think we do need to review our whole strategy towards China, especially how much business we do with it. That will really punish them.
OK, interesting. Con, Cindy, thanks very much. I was just Googling there how many Chinese students come to the UK to study. It's nearly 160,000. So perhaps if there is a real risk of infiltration from China, we could do something potentially with them.
Although, do you know what I found so fascinating is those latest espionage cases that were brought to court were both English people.
Yeah.
But they had been targeted by the Chinese
being paid the big
So
bucks.
how do you protect against that? It's a dilemma. Let us know what you think would be the right course of action. Are we being robust, as Rishi Sunak would have us believe, or do you think we need to accept, as Ian Duncan-Smith has been saying, that we are at war with China? Let us know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say.
OK, still lots more to come. We're going to be going through the day's big stories with Norman Baker and Dr. Renee Honderkamp. That's next. Stay with us.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Organisations, plural, because there's loads of people doing this, that organisations are charging schools to be part of this odd league table about who's trying to outdo who when it comes to who is more trans-inclusive with the kids than the next person. There's something makes me uneasy about this.
Supposing a child comes home and says, you think, oh, I've done well today. He said, well, how have you done? He said, well, I was #1 painter, or I was #1 reader. No, I wasn't. I was made LGBT champion. This is a 4- and 5-year-old. Look, I can understand this, actually, as we develop into the secondary school. I can understand more debates taking place. I cannot understand why we have to thrust it at young children. And I think if you ask the parents, they'd be hostile to it. And what about the role the teacher has to play in all this?
Society has been one way, the pendulum is swinging the other way, and they're pushing it very far in order to kind of proliferate change. And this is probably the toughest period in that evolutionary process, because the LGBTQ+ community is saying that you've got to really rage against the machine to get people to listen. Because put it like this now, even this conversation, the whole country is listening, the whole world is listening. These are the kinds of eyeballs and ears they haven't had before. And there's going to be friction. There's going to be a locking of heads in the process to getting to a point where you establish a new equilibrium where they feel more incorporated. Like I've said, the greatest force of allies that the LGBTQ+ community has always had is heterosexual women. What you're moving towards now is doing things that is beginning to turn them from allies into people who feel that, oh, for you to thrive, I'm being deprived, and that's a problem. When they realise you're alienating allies, they will understand you've got to recalibrate to have that kind of understanding between both parties.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, we're taking a look at the papers and what is making the news today in the company of the Right Honourable Norman Baker and Dr Renee Hundekamp. You missed earlier, a little joke there, because he got promoted or demoted, whichever way you want to look at it, to doctor. No, I'm not saying it's a demotion, but, the incorrect title. Yeah, so we'll give his correct one this hour. So let's start with you, Norman. And this is a story from the Mail Online about women and the unpaid domestic chores that we're all chained to the sink doing.
Well, indeed, it's a story actually based on the Office of National Statistics, which clearly has nothing better to do, really. Which has generated this time use in the UK bulletin, which shows what we all do down to the minute in terms of how much time we spent travelling and everything else. And as part of that, it suggests that women are still working an hour longer than men around the home every day. Yes, indeed. And it's particularly bad in Yorkshire, apparently, where the men are laziest in Yorkshire, according to the ONS.
But is it women? Is it stay-at-home women, or is it working women?
I don't think it says that, but I think it's just generally people who I don't think it's working women as well as
because my wife is a stay-at-home mum now. She recently took the decision to stay at home. I said to Isabel earlier, actually, she said, what does your wife do? I said, I told her to stay at home. I said, oh, that
I didn't take that very well.
I think you'd be very careful, because women who stay at home are working women in
incredibly hard-working women, just doing it without a wage.
So, what we forget is that before we moved women into the workplace, their job was at home to raise the children, look after the house, supply the food for the husband normally, and the husband's job was to make enough money to allow that to happen. And there's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot to be said that once we moved women out of the house into factories and wherever, actually things got worse. They got worse for children because they didn't have their mum. We know that the best thing a child can have is their mum at home or their dad, either way, whichever way it goes. I really I'm bored by these stories because, firstly, as we said outside, how do they collate these statistics by area of the country that Yorkshire men do the least? Well, maybe Yorkshire men work longer hours than other men in the country, and that's why they do the least. Who knows? Certainly the man in my family works, you know, like a Trojan to bring money into the home, and I work too. But, you know, he's not sitting on the sofa watching TV in the evening, he's working.
Here's a question for you. So your other half works like a Trojan. Do you still ask him to do household chores? Is he happy to do chores when he's back, the washing up, putting the kids to bed if, you know, you've got young kids?
I couldn't be here today if he wasn't getting the little one ready for school. And he would happily do those jobs. And he's probably a bit unusual in that way that he actually would actively take part. But I don't have to ask him.
Just to chuck my penny's worth into all of this, I do think a lot of what you said is true about how things have got worse. One wage does not suffice now to buy a house, often smaller than a generation ago would have been able to afford. That's a shame for our children who definitely, I think, don't have enough of their own parents at home. And I, you know, not speaking from my own experience, my husband is massively involved around the house and with the children, so I've got no complaints. But I still think the vast majority of the mental load does still fall to working women. So I work and I also do the lion's share of the school admin, the play dates, the party buying of presents, all this stuff. It sounds minimal. The school uniform dilemmas, you know, the sporting events, all of that. And it's a big job. I wouldn't have it any other way, but I do think a bit of recognition doesn't hurt.
Recognition would be good, I agree. But I think we actually need, as you rightly say, I think it would be, if we could be, as you and your wife were, Ben, where through choice, the woman stays at home, say, at least until children are 5.
It doesn't have to be the woman. I mean, you're a working woman.
I did say woman or man earlier, I did. But I do think that, you know, maternally, that's the most natural way for things to happen.
Especially breastfeeding in those early years.
I think children win.
Before we leave the story, just there's other aspects of this analysis which are worth mentioning. Apparently, people spend 13 minutes a day only on sport and well-being, which doesn't sound very much.
How long, sorry?
13 minutes.
A day?
Yes, which isn't very healthy. But they spend 48 minutes on using computers, which I think is probably an underestimate.
Well, break it to you. You can do both at the same time. You can go for a run, listen to a news podcast or news radio, or you can go on your Peloton and watch us in the morning.
I think it's a bit confusing for the ONS to incorporate
it's too tricky, that.
Do you know what? As a mother who, 35 years ago, my son is as old as you, Ben, went back to work when he was 28 days old, full-time, and I'm talking 7 in the morning till 9 at night, so barely ever saw him because I had to, because I was the breadwinner, to a mother who then had a child 5 years ago and have organised my working life around being with her so she didn't have to go to nursery. The winner from that is my daughter.
Yeah. Actually, I'd argue as well that women who stay at home, mothers, most of the time, have a harder job looking
100%.
after, especially young kids.
100%.
I mean, when I come to work, it's a bit of a refuge for me because, you know, it's good
relentless,
fun.
it's thankless, and often they're little terrorists, aren't they? They never say thank you and they gaslight you all day long, but we love them dearly. OK, well, that got us going. That's a good debate this morning. Let's talk about something a little bit less controversial. Elon Musk. Norman, what's he been up to?
Well, is it less controversial? I don't know.
No, I was being silly.
Elon Musk is demanding millions from British teenager, 14-year-old British teenager, 1.6 million damages because she's been selling, I think it's a she, has been selling a handful of 3D printed keyrings with the company's brand. And despite the fact that in 2021, Elon Musk himself wrote on X, or Twitter, "You can steal our name, logo, and we won't sue you." However, the poor 14-year-old apparently is scared rigid, which is not surprising.
But this has come after previous warnings from Tesla and Musk for them to stop making these keyrings.
Well, it doesn't say that in the story. That may be so, Ben, I don't know. But what I do know is that it's disproportionate to what the offence is.
Maybe what Musk should do is sign her up as an employee for the future, because a 14-year-old who's selling keyrings is entrepreneurial.
Yes, exactly, good idea. That's the answer.
OK, let's turn from this one to a fake policeman who tried to pull over a female driver on the M1 by showing ID. Oh, this has all the hallmarks of Sarah
It really
Everard.
does. This is an interesting story. So this woman was on the motorway. She admits she was speeding. She was doing about 80, and a man in a car started harassing her, telling her to pull over, started waving an ID badge at her that had the police logo on it. She didn't feel that it was quite right because he was being so aggressive. She carried on speeding to the next service station where she pulled in, and she reported it to the police. The police then made a catalogue of errors and decided that he was a policeman, and they put it into the police complaint system. However, as it rumbled through there, they realised that he wasn't a policeman. He was a contractor to a police site.
Sounds familiar.
He had a badge that had a police logo on it, but he wasn't a policeman. By this time, they'd lost the CCTV footage that they had, and they timed out the time that they could take him to court. So they just had to apologise to her and go to him and give him a warning, and he denied all offences. So this man is still out there, and it does say to women, doesn't it, that you really can't trust anyone flashing a police badge at you.
One of my
and you
colleagues driving into work yesterday morning, we all come in very, very early, was pulled over by a police officer just because her car was a nice car and they thought, what are you doing driving around at this time of night? But there is always this moment as a woman, late at night, you know, are you safe to be stopped by the police? And it's such a shame that we even have to think like that.
Well, it's a shocking incident in many ways, but the other thing about it is how useless the police are when in processing matters, which happens again and again and again.
Well, we had after Sarah Everard, many people were saying we're no longer going to be stopping for police if they're by themselves, lone coppers.
Yeah.
We're just not going to do it.
And you don't have to. That's what women should know. You don't have to. You can go somewhere safe and call the police and say, is this a real police?
Top tip, that, absolutely. Where do you want to go? You choose.
Should we talk about Rufus Wainwright?
Oh, go on then.
Yes.
So this is quite interesting because it's Brexit derangement syndrome at its very best. So he's written an absolutely rubbish play and it was absolutely panned by all of the critics and it had to close it 2 months early, but he's actually blaming Brexit because apparently after Brexit, Brits have become very insular and have no curiosity and so can't possibly look at his play through the eyes which they should. Now, this is interesting because a couple of weeks ago, Badil said that lorries were crashing into bridges because of Brexit, and Brian Cox said that as we're going to get a Trump president, we needed to reverse Brexit immediately. Brexit derangement syndrome is at its height now. It's like dying rats, isn't it? They will always find that extra bit of energy.
Well, we've had it for years, Norman. Everything that went wrong with a little old coffee shop down the high street, it closed because no one was buying coffee from them. Oh, because of Brexit.
Well, let's get
there's lightning. Oh, because of Brexit. We've had it for years.
Well, let's get these matters in perspective. There is a Brexit consequence, which is a reduction in GDP, and there are issues about bureaucracy at the ports and so on. So there are Brexit consequences. Rufus Wainwright's musical is not one of the Brexit consequences. I mean, he's not very good, apparently. And so to blame it on Brexit is like saying, why haven't you bought my book? You know, it's Brexit's fault.
But doesn't that show the madness? Because in 2009, he had a self-penned opera called Prima Donna that flopped and had to close early, but that couldn't possibly have been of Brexit, but now it is.
There are a lot of people who voted for Brexit, though, who say that it didn't deliver what they were promised, and I think there is a legitimate debate about whether or not that's the case. If you think of some of the promises that you were made, we'd go through some of the 5 things that we were told beforehand. We'd get our money back and ask whether or not that happened. We could decide who comes into our country. We're not having a huge amount of success with that. We could make our own laws again. Lots of people are having problems with that.
Is that the fault of the mechanism of Brexit, or just the incompetent bunch of politicians who have been handled?
Exactly, but it's not what we were sold, is what I'm trying to say.
What about the NHS bus? All this logo on the side of the bus.
The NHS has got more money now than it's ever had. £200 billion a year, Norman. How much
700 million a week, latest think tank figures have for the NHS. 700 million a week.
What a mess it's in.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe because we've got uncontrolled mass migration.
Maybe
I don't think that's to do with migration. It's to do with the way it's been run.
But you don't think there's too many people here?
I don't think... Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the NHS is not working properly because the NHS isn't working properly. It's nothing to do with migration. It's to do with the management.
Well, I think it's everything. When you're not funding something properly and you've got too many people, of course...
No, it's to do with a whole range of things, including failure to deal with...
Thank you both. Let's get some sunnier vibes with your weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. It should be a dry day for most of us. There's a bit of a cloudier start across the east coast. That's because some clouds pulled in overnight. That should slowly start to burn back throughout this morning and into the afternoon. There could also be some cloudier skies across western coasts into this afternoon, but I think many inland areas will see some long-lived sunshine. It will feel quite warm in the sunshine. However, notice across northwestern areas of Scotland, we're starting to see some rain approach through this afternoon. That'll mainly be restricted to the Western Isles, perhaps parts of the Highlands, and it will feel a little bit cooler here with a bit of a breeze, but in the sunshine, highs of 21 degrees are expected this afternoon, so a similar feel to yesterday. Through this evening, that rain will continue to persist across the far northwest, turning heavy at times, but it will remain restricted to the north of Scotland. Elsewhere, it should stay dry overnight, but again, we could see some mist and fog starting to develop. Some drizzly rain is also possible over parts of the Pennines and southern Scotland. Should be another fairly mild night, despite any clearer skies. So a bright start for many areas of the UK on Thursday, perhaps some mist and fog that will be fairly quick to clear, and it's going to be another dry, bright and sunny day on Thursday. However, across the far northwest of Scotland, still skies will remain cloudier. Rain should start to ease though as you head towards the afternoon, with some brightness developing here as well. But in the sunshine, highs of 22 or 23 degrees, so rather warm with high UV levels.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There's disruption to a number of train services in England today because of industrial action, with no service on most of Anti-West Coast, Chiltern, Cross Country, East Midlands, Great Western and the North Western and West Midlands rail routes. On the M62 in Cheshire, there's a lane closed eastbound after an accident between junctions 10 and 11 from the M6 to Birchwood. The queues from junction 8 west of Warrington. On the M6 in Cheshire, there's a lane closed southbound after an accident between junctions 18 and 17 from Middlewich and Holmes Chapelton to Sandbach, causing queues. The M40 in Warwickshire's closed northbound from junction 12 at Gaydon to 14 at Leamington after an accident causing delays. In Northamptonshire, the A14's blocked westbound by an accident between junction 1 at Welford and the M1-M6 Catthorpe interchange, with queues from junction 2. And people arriving into UK airports this morning may experience delays at border control after a technical problem last night. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. But you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Wednesday, the 8th of May. This is Breakfast with Isabel Webster and Ben Leo.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Amid a rise in young people being bullied online, Ofcom is set to get tough, introducing new age restrictions to use social media.
And he's back in town. Prince Harry is in the UK today to celebrate 10 years of his Invictus Games charity. But why has he been snubbed by his father, the King?
The UK is warning Israel over the risk of war crimes in Rafah as UNICEF says 600,000 children face catastrophe in the region.
There is a catastrophe facing us, and the international community need to work to bring about that immediate ceasefire and bring an end to this horrendous conflict.
And chaos at our airports as nationwide e-gate glitches leave tens of thousands of passengers stranded in terminals. Were you affected? Let us know. gbnews.com/you'll say.
And we'll be looking back at night one of Eurovision, seeing who's in and who's out.
Good morning. Another day of sunny and bright weather for many of us, but will that sunshine last until tomorrow? You can find out all the details with me a little later on.
Now, it's been confirmed that Prince Harry will not be meeting his father, the King, whilst he's in the UK this week. Harry landed in London last night ahead of an event marking 10 years since the Invictus Games was launched later on today.
Yes, however, a spokesperson for the Duke of Sussex told GB News it's, quote, unfortunately not possible due to His Majesty's full programme, adding that the Prince is, quote, understanding of his father's commitments and hopes to see him soon. Sounds like a snub to me. Earlier, we spoke to former butler to King Charles III, Grant Harold.
It is possible that his diary will be full because obviously he's only undertaking so many things at a time. But I think most of us might be thinking, with his son being in the country, you'd want to make the opportunity to possibly see him. And it could be as simple as that the diary is not permitting. And also Prince Harry's diary might not be allowing, it might just be clashing. But then, as you say, there's the question underneath the surface, is there still this ongoing fallout? Because I also noted that Prince William is also not going to see his brother, and neither of them are going to be attending the service at St Paul's. Again, that could be because of their personal commitments and their diaries. That's completely possible. But I think when it comes to family, normally families, when they're in a country, do try to see each other. So it does seem slightly strange, but it's not completely impossible that it is because of the workloads.
Grant, you know the King quite well. You're his former butler, of course. How do you think he'll be dealing with the fact that he is pretty much estranged from his son? Emotionally, what's he going to be going through, do you think?
I have absolutely no doubt that, as far as that's concerned, that he'll be devastated by the fact that that relationship is not how it used to be. When I was there, the three of them were very, 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 well, I should say the four of them, including the Dutch Como, as she was, were very, very close. And to see and to follow what's happened over the last couple of years is even for myself, it's upsetting because they were very close. And I've no doubt that the King, that is something that will be on his mind on probably a daily basis.
And given how much we know the King adores his wife and the comments that Harry made about her in his book Spare, do you think that that will be a factor in these strained relations?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can't put something like that in a book and make those kind of comments and expect everything to kind of be fine. I mean, obviously it's hurtful, and it's interesting because, again, for me it's very confusing because I always thought that they all got on and never kind of saw. It doesn't mean to say that those thoughts and feelings went there. It's completely possible, but it's just I never personally ever witnessed any of that, and I think that's what's very sad is it's come to this because see they all got on really well, and it's sad that now this is a family that's no longer united as it once was.
What did you personally witness? Just give us a sense of that closeness that you saw whilst you were in the household, up close and personal.
Yeah, just that they all got on, you know. And when I say they got on, like any other family, you know, this is what I think sometimes people forget is yes, they're all family, but behind closed doors, they are like any other family. They get together, they have meals together, they have laughs together, they have fun together. And I witnessed all that, and I witnessed the fun times and the laughter. Do you know what I mean? The laughter between, for example, Queen Camilla and William and Harry, and the kind of jokes and the fun side.
So that was King Charles' former butler, Grant Harold, talking earlier about, well, the fact that today, so Prince Harry, he's going to this Invictus event at St Paul's Cathedral. He's going to be finished about 6 o'clock, I think. And the King...
No royals attending either with him, just him.
Yeah, quite telling. And the King has a garden party at Buckingham Palace. That finishes shortly afterwards, but of course they're not meeting.
Yeah, we spoke earlier to Kinsey Schofield, who was speculating about whether or not something's changed in the last few days because there was some sort of mood music that there might well be a meeting between the pair. There was last time Prince Harry was in town. Sadly, we've been told now there isn't going to be one. Has there been a fallout? And I wonder if we will find out about that a little bit further down the road. Obviously, that's speculation, but it certainly feels as though relations are more strained than ever at the moment, don't
I think he just can't be trusted from the King's perspective and William's perspective, his brother. You just can't trust him. I mean, the last time... What was the incident? The last time they met, or the time before, Harry ran off to do an Invictus event in Amsterdam, and he gave another chat to American television, breakfast television, talking about his father's health. So, I mean, how can you trust someone like that? And it's a shame because it's his son, but there's a lot more at stake than just a father-son relationship. It's the future, I'd argue, of the monarchy.
Do you think that if they don't reform and restore their relationship, the monarchy's under threat? I think that the monarchy... Or you think that he is just destabilising them as a unit?
Yeah, I think certainly Meghan's intention has been to bring down the monarchy.
I don't know if it's deliberate, but I definitely think that's been a consequence of what they've done. I think she, from afar, was sort of very admiring of the royal family, but just realised it was a lot of hard work and not quite in line with her LA lifestyle.
I think Meghan's problem was that Brits kind of see through people's intentions and the kind of the fake US, oh, hey, how you doing? Have a nice day. Whereas maybe in America she'd get away with that kind of thing.
Not here. Let us know what you think. Get in touch on our website, gbnews.com/your say. We are reading them all. It's trying to find time to squeeze in reading them out that is the problem for us. But we do have time to ask you this morning, please, if you have time yourselves, to get involved with our Trick Award nomination. We have been put forward, we're very delighted to say, for Best News Programme category with some tough competition. And we managed to win last year. It'd be absolutely fantastic if we could win this year. And we're not the only ones up for an award. You can see the lovely Eamonn Holmes there up for news presenter, along with our colleague Nigel Farage as well, and Camilla Tominey for her interview with Alistair Stewart for Interview of the Year. So those are the nominations that we have this year.
Yeah, it's all to play for, but we need your help, of course. All you have to do is head to poll-trick.org.uk, and all the details are also on gbnews.com, or on your screen right now for TV viewers is the QR code. Just get your mobile phone, open the camera app, put the camera over the QR code, and a small yellow link should appear on your screen. Just press that with your finger and you can vote. And, yeah, thank you for your support.
And just to let you know, we are waiting for Claire Coutinho to appear. She is, of course, in the Cabinet. I think she's Net Zero and Energy Minister. She's going to be talking to us any minute now, not least about the online safety changes that are being brought in from today. We are establishing comms with her. But in the meantime, whilst you hang around for that, why not get involved in our latest Great British Giveaway?
Yes, this is your chance to win the biggest cash prize of the year so far, a whopping £20,000. Imagine what you could do with it. A cruise for me, I think I've already said.
Yeah, you love a cruise. You've got some interesting stories from cruises of...
Some that we can't repeat at this time of the morning. I've already told Isabel about them. But anyway, here's your chance to get a hold of all that cash.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox, and I won the Great British Giveaway. I'd say, why not? What is it? The price of a text and £2 to enter. And if I can win it, anybody can win it. And they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Right, let's take a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom. Sorry, Andrew Pearce is in the studio. We were just chatting off mic there, and we will be talking to him in just a moment's time. But the other stories making headlines today involve the Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron.
Yes, he's warned that Israel is at risk of committing war crimes in Rafah if they continue their latest offensive without a credible plan to protect civilians. Global charity UNICEF, they've also warned the ground incursion into Rafah will pose a, quote, catastrophic risk to 600,000 children currently taking shelter in the city. Earlier, we spoke to Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth about Labour's reaction to what's going on.
There is a catastrophe facing us, and the international community need to work to bring about that immediate ceasefire and bring an end to this horrendous conflict.
The porn star Stormy Daniels has taken to the stand in Donald Trump's hush money trial yesterday, describing her alleged sexual encounter with the former president at a golf tournament in 2006, raised a few eyebrows. It is just one of 4 criminal trials that Donald Trump's facing. And earlier we spoke to an American criminal defense attorney, Joseph Tully, who told us about the impact it's having in the States.
The prosecution, it's a win because they get to muddy him up in front of the jury. But really, in terms of can the prosecution meet the elements of the crime, this had very little legal significance.
And elsewhere, a nationwide issue with border force e-gates at airports has caused significant disruption overnight. Heathrow, Gatwick and Manchester were all affected by the outage as tens of thousands of passengers were left stranded in terminals. A spokesperson for the Home Office has revealed the network issue occurred just before 8 p.m. last night. The e-gates then came back online at midnight, and there's no indication it was a result of a cyber attack.
OK, waiting not very patiently in the wings for Britain's newsroom, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner are here with us. Always waiting patiently, but we're just desperate to chat, that was all.
I want to know, Isabel, if you're going to clamour. You're going to be in the clamour to join the Garrett Club, which after 190 years will allow women members.
I wouldn't turn down it. I don't know if I can afford it, but I would love to go. I don't like being told I can't go places. I think it's the right decision.
You can go to the Garrick as a woman.
Yes, but I would like, if I want to be a member, why can't I be?
You have to be with a male member, but now, of course, the rules changed.
Bev, are you going to be signing up?
No, not at all. I think it's extraordinary that The Guardian have got nothing better to do and nothing more important to write about.
Because it was their big campaign.
Than the membership list of an ancient men's club, which frankly no woman would particularly want to. I don't care.
But you know, you can't just blame this on The Guardian. I mean, serious, high-profile members of the club and members of society quit over it, and high-profile members of the club voted to change it. So
and they weren't going to do that.
Right.
No, and they weren't even bothered until they got publicly shamed, and it's the reaction to being blackmailed by The Guardian as though they...
Well, sometimes that's the role of the press, isn't it, to force change?
Virtue
but maybe to cover up some mass injustice, but not about a men's club. I mean, can we not have our own spaces, Andrew? Are we just destined to...
Well, I have no problem with that, but there are women's clubs, of course. Are they now going to be challenged by men? My prediction, absolutely not.
Interesting.
Because why would men want to join a women's-only club?
Just ridiculous.
OK, what else have you got coming up for us this morning?
Well, Andrew's very excited about Prince Harry being back in the country.
I think the King is absolutely right not to spend...
Something's happened. What's happened? Because, you know...
Well, he's written a horrible book.
Well, I know, but he saw
He's done horrible interviews. He's slagged off his father at every opportunity. That's what's happened.
Guys, I know all of that. What I'm saying is, all the mood music and all the things we were being told us, they might do, and they did last time he was here. Yeah. So what's changed?
Something... Yeah, you could be right. So something's happened behind the scenes. The King, as we know, has got cancer. He's having treatment. Kate's having treatment. I just think they don't trust him.
I am not going to say a bad word about Harry today. He's here for Invictus Games, which is a remarkable event.
Well, they're next year.
Supporting the people, he's celebrating the anniversary of those games. So
what,
I'm going to defend him.
You're a big Harry fan, are you?
No, not normally, but I think on a day like today, we have to recognise this is what he did really well was this event, and also for the service.
Well, we have done that this morning. We've spoken to a former veteran as well and focused on that. But I do think there is a story that this royal snub.
Probably.
No royal will be at the service this afternoon either at St Paul's Cathedral.
Quite crucially, Andrew, he's not visiting the Princess of Wales either.
No. She won't anywhere near.
We've also got Richard Tice waiting to come in as well to talk about the results in the election and amazing research into childhood allergies. If you've got a child or a grandchild, you need to keep watching to see cures for childhood allergies to peanuts, etc.
OK, we look forward to it. Thanks very much indeed to both of you.
All to come. OK, we're joined now by Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, Claire Coutinho MP. Good morning, Claire. Thanks for joining us. First of all, let's just get past our top story of the day about these new social media rules for companies like TikTok and WhatsApp. They could be fined up to 10% of global revenue if they don't adhere to new rules that your government's pushing through, for example, IDs for young children who want to sign up to the app. Is this what the public want? Is this what we've been clamouring for?
Well, so look, I was children's minister before this job, and when I spoke to parents, one of the things that they were most worried about is what was happening to their children online. So I think it is really welcome that we're going to be the first country in the world to have this landmark legislation. We're going to have the strongest legislation when it comes to keeping children safe online. And I think that's really important because if you look at some of the things that children have been accessing, whether it's self-harm videos or suicide videos, it is really worrying for parents. And I think it's really important that we're protecting the next generation as well.
It's interesting, a letter has been sent to the Prime Minister and Sir Keir Starmer by the parents of 11 children whose deaths were linked to negative social media activity, and they've asked for the government to go further. They welcome the changes from today, but they say that there is a tide change. There is a public appetite for further regulation around all of this, and certainly as a parent, I've noticed that there seems to be a bigger debate about perhaps the banning of smartphones for anybody under the age of 16. Is the government considering this type of legislation? Because there certainly seems to be, from these bereaved parents and indeed, you know, the worried majority really in this country, that not enough is being done at the moment.
So we've taken steps to strengthen the guidance on banning phones in schools. That was something that I was very positive about when I was in the Department for Education, and Gillian Keegan has taken forward. And I know we're looking at everything that we can do in this area. It's something that many of us feel passionately about, including the Prime Minister, because we want to make sure that our children are protected online. And it's not just about what they can access, which the Online Safety Act will help, but also the things that I think we all worry about is what is it stopping them doing as well, in terms of socialising, exercise, all of those other things which we know are really important for their well-being.
Just pin you down on the particular point there about smartphones for under 16s. Would you personally, I don't know if you've got children, but would you welcome a ban on smartphones for under 16s?
Well, look, I'm definitely worried about this area. So like I said, when I was Children's Minister, I looked at well-being, and one of the things that I was really interested in was the link between how much time our children are spending online and their mental health. And for me, there was two things. It's what they could access, and I'm really pleased that we're doing the online safety legislation, because that will tackle that part, but it's also what it's stopping them doing. So that's the things that I care about. I definitely welcome government's efforts to act on this and make sure that we're the safest place in the country when it comes to, in the world when it comes to being online for children.
OK, Claire, let's talk about this news this morning that the UK is the first in Europe to invest in next-generation nuclear fuel. A contract worth £196 million has been granted, which means we will be less reliant on Russia. Can you just explain what it is, what's going on and why it's good for the UK?
So we're investing £200 million in Capenhurst to create an advanced nuclear fuel facility. And the reason why this is so important is at the moment, the only commercial producer of this type of nuclear fuel is Russia and Putin. And we've just seen what happens when Russia's been able to weaponise energy supplies, in that case, oil and gas. And we don't want to be in that situation again. So I think it's great that but Britain will be able to have its own facility that will contribute to our energy security, but also the energy security of our allies. And just to make a wider point on nuclear and why I think that's important, nuclear is going to be a really important part of our future energy sourcing because it's clean, it's reliable, it's stable, and also because we've got these new types of technology coming through, small modular reactors and advanced modular reactors, it'll be much cheaper to build as well. So that's why we're taking big steps to back nuclear. Just after Christmas, I set out the largest expansion of nuclear in 70 years so that we can all have this cheaper, cleaner energy going forward.
And critics say you've been slow to back nuclear and that you could have made some of these changes sooner. But on the issue of this uranium enrichment facility that you are announcing, you know, this comes at the sort of juxtaposition of the story yesterday about Chinese hacking or alleged Chinese hacking. A lot of people concerned about national security. We are in a more unsafe world than ever before. A lot of people say that the way that the government has been handling the issue of China specifically has been dovish, I suppose, to say the least. What assurances can you give to people that as we open and continue down this path of what has in the past been a controversial method of generating energy, that we're safe in the UK when we're not even prepared to stand up to those who are able to intervene in the MOD, for example?
Well, firstly, I would just point everyone to the defence spending that we set out a couple of weeks ago to increase defence spending. We're already one of the highest spenders, but we're going further to make sure that we spend 2.5% of GDP on spending. The reason that I point that out is, as we made that announcement, we also pointed to countries like Iran, Russia and China, and we said this in the document, countries which had become more autocratic and which were coordinating together in a hostile way. So we have called this out and we are taking action to make sure that we're secure. But when it comes to our energy security, you're right, this has to be a priority for any government. It's my priority. And that's why I've been working to increase the British supply chain, which means more jobs here, but also that we can ensure that the energy that we use in Britain is made in Britain. I think that's really important. And I would just contrast that with the Labour position, which is decarbonising the grid by 2030. That is a target that nobody else has, no other country. The climate change lobby aren't even calling for it. And what it would mean is that you would increase your dominance on the current global player when it comes to things related to clean energy, for example, critical minerals and batteries, and that is China, which is why it's really important we take our time with this. We've set out funds to boost our own supply, boost our own businesses, so that, as I said, we can create more of our energy infrastructure in Britain for Britain.
OK, Claire, just very briefly in 10, 15 seconds, what do you make of the Garrett Club being bounced into accepting women members?
Will you be applying?
I won't be. It's not something I spend a lot of time thinking about, to be honest.
OK, fair enough.
Claire,
Claire, good to you.
Thank you very much.
Stay with us still to come. We're going to be looking at Eurovision after this quick break.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the quaint Derbyshire village of Sudbury, there's a storm brewing between the local football club and the National Trust. This grass field might seem unremarkable, but for hundreds of years it's been part of the Sudbury Hall estate, playing host to the village football and cricket matches. Now the National Trust are planning to put an end to that tradition in the name of biodiversity, with plans for trees and plants where the football club play. Some worry it breaks a memorandum of wishes from the late Lord Vernon, whose family have lived here since 1660. Manager of Sudbury FC Tom Crutchley says he's upset at the decision.
Naturally disappointed. We've been here, this is our 9th year. We've put a lot of effort into here to keep playing, to maintain it. I'm from the village originally, so personally it was, it is very upsetting.
MP for Derbyshire Dale Sarah Dines says the National Trust aren't respecting the history of the site.
I feel they're trampling over the wishes of historic owners who gave up this wonderful site for the nation. And for over 100 years, people have played football and cricket here. It's incredibly sad. Incredibly sad. And it's against the wishes of a lot of people locally who've written to me from the village.
Sudbury Hall lives under the branding of the Children's Country House, a decision which Dines says is disrespectful to the history of the estate.
I mean, this is fake to make it into a children's theme park. It's almost a reimagining. And in fact, that's the very words it says on their website. The house is reopened. It's been reimagined. I don't want our heritage to be reimagined. I think the National Trust has been captured by people who have different ideas than most people in this country.
Whilst the public will still be able to roam these historic grounds, the village feels like a legacy is being snatched away. Jack Carson, GB News, Sudbury.
Okay, Eurovision Mania is officially kicking in. It was the first round of the semi-finals, which took place last night, and Ireland's Bambi Thug stole the show. You're not a big fan, are you?
No, she's very demonic and, goth-like. It's very strange. Anyway, fans weren't too happy with the UK's Ollie Alexander either. As some said, his vocals were too shaky. And Ellie Phillips, showbiz reporter, who's going to join us now. Ellie, fans were also furious about his comments about the British flag.
Yeah, he's not doing himself any favours, really, Alexander. His performance yesterday, so the big five involved in Eurovision automatically go through to the final on Saturday, of which the UK has won, but he did perform yesterday, so we got to see his act. It was amazing in terms of visuals. It's this locker room that hurtles towards earth. His mic pack fell off and he carried on like a pro, but his vocals were dodgy. And yeah, he's not a fan of the UK flag, which is interesting because in his warm-up to this, he actually wore it in a Diamante kind of bra while he's performing. So he's caused a bit of controversy there. You mentioned Bambi Thug. Now that's a big standout moment. So that's Ireland's act. She performed, non-binary act called Bambi Thug performed Doomsday Blue in this demon costume. There was witchcraft on stage, satanic sacrifice, but people are absolutely loving it, saying it's the most original performance they've ever seen. And Bambi Thug has become the first Irish contestant to make it through the Eurovision final since 2018. Politically, they wore makeup messaging, so a line of Ogham, which is the oldest written language of Ireland, they had on their face, and it said ceasefire, freedom of Palestine. They were made to remove it and were only allowed for it to say crown the witch, and people were like, why can't you say these things? Nobody would even have noticed if you really went into
Ellie,
it. So
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Already.
Got all the politics kicking off already. We'll see more of you later on. Thank you for now, though. It's Andrew and Bev.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. It should be a dry day for most of us. There's a bit of a cloudier start across the east coast. That's because some clouds pulled in overnight. That should slowly start to burn back throughout this morning and into the afternoon. There could also be some cloudier skies across western coasts into this afternoon, but I think